And to that piece of lieutenant that's always on his podcast, bash us, yeah.
Attention to roll call.
That's right. Good morning, everybody. 805 Live. Good morning to our friends and listeners. I see already got some people with coffee in the chat over here. I think it's been a hell of a week. Packed week. It's your Friday roundtable. Let's jump right into it, man. I'm excited to talk about this because I predicted, and I'll still say, I think Jessica Tisch will be the police commissioner under Zohran Mamdani. I just don't think it will be for the entire tenure. I think it will be a short stint just for the transition. John, let's jump into it, brother. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of questions. I mean, first off, I think the thumbnail for this show is hysterical, right? Like it's Jessica Tisch in the Israeli dress. It's Zohran Mamdani in the Palestinian garb, because it's definitely like an odd couple, right? It's like if we would have said, oh, you know, potentially Zohran Mamdani would have kept Jessica Tisch 3 months ago, people would be like, no, that's not happening. You know, I think most of Mamdani's younger base would say that's not happening. You know, I've read articles like saying that, you know, Jessica Tisch is a Zionist and he's this, and like all like, you know, all like political fodder in these articles. But I think it's kind of like strange bedfellows, because, you know, he's really trying to go further onto this progressive civilianized type of law enforcement. It's something that Eric Adams ran on, campaign on, won on, and then he distanced himself from it last year. You know, once all the corruption kicked in, once all that kicked in. So, you know, I don't know what's going to happen. I think ultimately, if I'm Zohran Mamdani, if I'm a progressive mayor who's really going to have a microscope over every public safety policy I implement and everything I do, I think that I want Jessica Tisch, because I think we've seen she's a media darling. You know, do you really care if the cops like her or not? I don't think he does, because I don't think he cares if you guys leave or don't leave. And I think she's a media darling, and I think she could keep the New York Post and Fox News and the rest of these New York centric based media outlets really off of his back and really looking at him with that fine tooth comb. And I think I could see why he wants her. I could see why he would want her to be. Now, does she want to do it? I don't know. I wouldn't. I'll tell you right now, I would have never jumped in with Eric Adams, the way he was failing, the corruption scandals, the federal investigations all the way around him. I mean, like, if I'm Jessica Tisch, I never jump in there, but she does. You know, she's got the media on her side. You know, she cleaned it up as best as she could without having full reins, because, again, I don't believe that she has full reins in the New York City Police Department. I believe that is still Eric Adams is still holding that, except, you know, he defers to her on some issues. So it's weird, man. Strange bedfellows and an odd couple.
Yeah, good morning, guys. Happy Friday. You know, my initial thoughts on this, I think it is the odd couple. I mean, considering Mamdani spent how many, you know, what he mainly before he started becoming a candidate, and he kind of gradually tried to move to the center Democrat. He's talked a lot about Israel, okay, and the fact that he's even considering her for that post is kind of it kind of goes back to what we say, that all of this is just you know, political theater, you know, and that at the end of the day, they're both wealthy elitists. And so I think, you know, for his sake also, like, if he picks her, and I mean, she's been leading the department as the department's been you know, arresting the protesters. So just from the standpoint of him and the, you know, the crowd of far left young Democrats that voted for him, I can't see how he can then pick her and go back to that crowd and tell them that he's again, he's going to work on the promises that he made, or that he's the same guy that he was before he became mayor. So we pointed out many times that his agenda isn't going to work, and that at some point he's going to have to face his constituents, knowing that he didn't deliver on free buses or free groceries or possibly even a rent freeze, and that his base is going to be very angry at him. Well, I think this is going to be another one of those reasons why the base is not going to be too happy with him.
Well, to me, I think just the appearance alone, right? The appearance of Jessica Tisch remaining and staying on as police commissioner while Zohran Mamdani is the mayor, it appears that it would cause friction, right? She has given this appearance that she's traditional law and order police commissioner, and Zohran Mamdani is far from that with his policies that would just completely transition and transform and just be a complete 180 change for the NYPD. However, I think the fact that she was not a cop and that she is an elite, that's where they have something in common. They're both elites, which I think is actually more important than their status, despite that, as far as their views and their working capabilities and what their visions are. But the fact that they're elites, that's where the commonality is. And now I said before, even though his policies would be a complete change, if he does put in Rodney Harrison or a Bossy or someone else in this facet, even though they'll pander to him and they'll just be cucks like everyone else, they'll still have the culture of the NYPD, and that's going to be another transition where Jessica Tisch was never a police officer. So she's easy. I think it's easier for her to also change the culture of the NYPD, because we're not talking about just changing policy. In order to actually carry out this policy where the NYPD is now at the bottom of the pecking order and we have a different form of policing, we have to also change the culture of the NYPD. So for those reasons, I think it makes sense for him to keep Jessica Tisch. And I do think that Jessica Tisch will accept it. Why not? This is actually a clean slate in comparison to coming on with Eric Adams. While it's just riddled with corruption, she stayed on, and she stayed on even though she didn't have full authority and still doesn't have full authority. She stayed on. So she cleaned up some things, but the crumbs crew is still there. So I just think it's been masked. It's complete masking. It's masking tape. I don't think that it's actually been cleaned up at all. I just think it's cleaned up enough that you don't really see it. You know, it's like putting a wrap on a car and you took the wrap off and it's still all scratched up and it's still a disaster. That's Jessica Tisch.
Yeah, no, I listen. I think it's just very strange to me. But again, politically savvy move if he's able to convince her to stay. I mean, like that's how it's appearing in the media now. Like, so again, I don't want to say that like he's trying to convince her to stay, but that's how it appears to me based upon what I'm reading in the media. Right? That's how the media is portraying it. Now, is it her that's actually wanting to stay? And it's the media propping her up? It's possible also. So, but to me, it looks like he's trying to convince her to stay just based upon news reports and what the media is saying. Not that I should really take any weight to anything that the news is reporting these days, but that's how it appears to me. Like, so, and if that is the case, I think that it's a smart move politically on his part, because, you know, you already see like he's getting blamed for basically everything that's occurring currently. And it's, you know, like, although his policies are really just a redress of everything that's been happening in New York City, he's getting all the bad publicity for it, right? All of the weight of these failed policies is falling on his shoulders. Now, his policy at the Department of Community Safety, is anything new? No, it's the violence intervention program on steroids, right? I put out a tweet earlier today about, and we could go through it, about Adams' 22 retail theft plan, where they were going to increase civilian patrols. I don't know who was getting paid for those civilian patrols. I would assume those would be violence interrupters. Sounds like the Department of Community Safety to me. And they were going to, in the city of New York, using your tax dollars, was going to install kiosks inside of retail locations to prevent theft. And at these kiosks, if you felt like robbing something, you could just rather instead go to this kiosk and it would provide social services for you. So like the insanity that is being reported currently about Zohran Mamdani is the insanity that's occurring in New York City. So, but yet everything Zoe's plan, Zoe this, Zoe that. It's like, hey, look, this was Bill de Blasio and Eric Adams' little baby, and Zohran Mamdani just dressed it up a little different, gave it a different name, wrote a few more lines on there, and it's all happening. So
I think it underscores the fact that they don't have any real plans for for safety. I think the city. I've talked about it many times, and I'll wait to dig further, go into the weeds about it. But I think none of the Democrats have had any real plan about the city. I think the city's in such we're in such a situation that in order to solve the problems, you have to come at it not just from law enforcement, but from the angle of you got to have a multi-agency approach, and it's a lot of the problems are societal. So the reason why I think again all the candidates seem to all the Democrat candidates seem to have the same plan, if just slight differences, is because they're all pulling from the same well, and they know that they're not, the city's in kind of a tough bind, and the problems you can't really, you can't really solve unless you solve other issues in the city, and the Democrats in general are unwilling to solve a lot of these problems because they really go back to Democrat policies in the city. And as we've talked about before, like, solving these problems means, there's some parts of the progressive industrial complex that won't eat, they won't get those crumbs anymore. So I think it's I think it's a larger issue about the party and the problems the city faces.
I want to say a big shout out to Hassan, man. Hassan is always on the chat. Thank you for being a great supporter and a great friend to the podcast and the entire network. Hassan, we appreciate it. You just left us $49.99 in coffee and donuts. Hassan, you're a good man, brother. We appreciate it. With that being said, if we look at also the stance that Zohran Mamdani had during his debates, how he's going to push back against Donald Trump, to me, it actually fits putting Jessica Tisch as the police commissioner, because at the time, at the height of ICE in New York City, Jessica Tisch had put out a memorandum at the time that the NYPD is not going to assist their federal partners unless there's an emergency, and that there was no law that was there was no crimes against law when it came to people crossing the border. And that was a big topic at the time. So for me, if you look at her stance at that time, that would also make sense for Zohran Mamdani to put her there, since he has said he's going to push back on Donald Trump, and his stance is very supportive of a sanctuary city and following that law and not having ICE in New York City. So for that, I think that makes sense for him to keep Jessica Tisch. The more that we think about it, at least when I think about it, I think it makes sense for him. I just don't see her staying there for the entire tenure of it.
Well, I think everyone thinks that she's looking for high political office. There's rumors that I heard that weren't reported, but I heard that, she may be Kathy Hochul's running mate for lieutenant governor, because her lieutenant governor is running against her, trying to primary her, Antonio Delgado. So I think everyone thinks she wants to be the mayor of New York City. So it makes sense that she wants to be around. So again, if she really wants to be the mayor and she wants to stay on as the police commissioner, she's going to need good publicity. Would you stay on if you thought that this guy's plans were insane and you thought it was going to scar up your name or muddy up your name or muddy up your legacy? And I think you're seeing the news media muddy up Zohran's legacy before he's even the mayor. You know what I mean? I mean, look at this. This is today's paper. Police farce. Zoe's plan to replace NYPD cops with safety workers is already failing. So to the public, to the rest of America, they believe that Zohran Mamdani created this plan, and this plan's in effect because of a policy that he put in place. But, for those of you that aren't in New York, and for those of you that are low information inside of New York, Zohran Mamdani is not the mayor. This was Bill de Blasio's plan. It started in late 21, and Eric Adams has ran with it, and it's been largely a huge failure. But, what do the progressives tell us? What do the Tiffany Cabans and the AOCs and the Zohran Mamdanis, what do they tell us? They use evidence-based strategies. But yet, the only evidence that we have is that all of these I don't even want to know what to call them, these like moving away, like this police moving away from armed police officer policies, all of these policies fail. They cost a lot of money, and there's never any data. And all of these not-for-profits making big money off of them, millions and millions of dollars. So how much of this is about continuing the gravy train as it is about public safety? And I think a lot of it has to do with continuing the gravy train. But I think when you look at policies like this, regardless if Jessica Tisch is the police commissioner or not, these policies are going to remain. The Department of Community Safety, whether it comes to fruition or not, is already happening. It's been happening under Eric Adams. It's been happening under Bill de Blasio. Whether you have an official Department of Community Safety doesn't matter, but how it's presented in the media will matter. And I think what you could see is that the media, Tisch really is a media darling, and it would be beneficial for Zohran to have her. I mean, other than that, I don't really see like that. I don't think that Jessica Tisch is great for morale. I don't think that the rank and file love her. I don't. I think that she is a good manager. I've seen what she could do in ITB. Other than that mistake with the phones that she purchased, I don't know how much of that was her mistake, how much of it was a rookie mistake, whatever. Other than that, I mean, she did do a lot of good as far as bringing the NYPD into the 21st century. I mean, like when I came on this job for like the first 5-6 years, I was typing on typewriters. You know what I mean? And then so she evolved. Like we didn't have, how long did it take before we had phones or emails? I mean, I think I was like 10 years on the job. I was like one of the first cops I knew with an email, only because I was an FIO, like before it was cool to be an FIO. You know what I mean? Like I was like the first cop I knew with a phone because of that. But like traditionally people didn't get phones unless you were assigned to intel, unless you were a commanding officer. Even the school, like people didn't have emails, like job emails. Like that's something that she brought forward. So I think that she has good managerial skills, but I think, the knock on her is always going to be is she's not a cop. She doesn't understand the culture. She's a billionaire heiress, and she doesn't understand the plight of the working man. And I think that's a fair knock to have on her.
I think it's she brought some changes to the NYPD, but I'm gonna say that those changes also come with some negatives too. Like the phones. You got all these cops staring at their phones all day, on posts and not looking, not being mindful of their surroundings. You have things like we could argue about the positives that have come from body cameras, but there's also some negatives. And I think it's kind of changed the job. And I mentioned before how like these young guys don't seem to, but back in the day, me and my partner would joke all the time in the RMP. And I'm not even sure how much of that goes on now, because I remember going to a job in the 3-3 when I was covering for COVID. And I remember making a joke in the apartment. It wasn't even like a joke that would come off as politically incorrect or anything, but the young guys told me they made the gesture that the body camera is on. So I mean those she made changes, but keep in mind that those changes also bring negatives to the job, and in a lot of ways we're seeing the long-term effects of the department moving more towards technology and analytics and all this, instead of going back to old-fashioned meat and potatoes policing. I think that's something that's lost, and we talked about it many times here, how a lot of these young guys maybe aren't as prepared as they once were. So, but you also noted that about the gravy train, and I'm gonna say that I think even her changes to the NYPD, all these changes are they're to make things cheaper on the city. And even though violence interrupters and civilian police are a gravy train for NGOs and community organizations, it's much cheaper for the city to pay them $2 an hour, than to pay a cop a pension, pay you health care, pay you have to contribute all these pension add-ons. And so it's I've said it all along that I think all these changes all these changes under the veil of progressivism is just a cover for us willingly accepting degraded government services. So.
Well, clearly the last thing that Zohran Mamdani cares about is the morale of the NYPD. He's already insulted the morale of the NYPD by referring to them as racist and as evil men with guns. So he's already insulted the NYPD. His backhanded apology to me means absolutely nothing and falls flat at its feet. So with that being said, he further insulted the morale of the NYPD by putting the NYPD at the bottom of the pecking order of policing and basically referring to them as non-professionals and peasants when it comes to public safety. What's ironic about that is so has Eric Adams, and exactly what John said, just in a different form, by putting violence interrupters. I remember, John, you and I did an episode about those kiosks, and it was so ridiculous that we couldn't stop laughing the entire episode because remember that episode? We couldn't stop laughing. It's so ridiculous. But the ridiculousness of the policies of Zohran Mamdani are already here. And Jessica Tisch has been on board the entire time. So why wouldn't she be on board? I think she's going to be totally on board. I don't think that she's concerned at all. And does she know the difference either anyway? Because she wasn't a beat cop herself. She didn't have her boots on the ground. And she said it. She's data driven. She goes by data. And policing, yes, data is very important when it comes to the measurement and metrics of crime. It's important when we measure patterns in particular areas. However, there's still that human element that you cannot measure. And that is the relationship that cops have with the community, the relationship that cops have and the observations that they make when they handle a 911 call, they have an interaction doing intrusive police work. But we're moving that under Zohran Mamdani. We're going to have social workers at the top of the hierarchy when it comes to the police department. And in some ways, it's not far off from where we are right now. We have those violence interrupters. We have social workers, other means. So Mikey G says it right here. It would be helpful if she would address the social media influencers harassing the NYPD officers while on the street and videotaping it. So that, I will say, that's a failure, not just by Jessica Tisch, but her predecessors her predecessors going back to Jimmy O'Neill. If we go back to Jimmy O'Neill and all the way up to where we are right now, I think it's 7 or 9 police commissioners. None of them have ever addressed the issue of NYPD police officers just being completely vulnerable and targeted. And we see it since the time that 2 police officers had water dumped on them, a very significant moment in police history, especially with the NYPD, and nothing was done. And the police commissioners, her predecessors, never addressed it, and neither did she. So nothing's getting better. So I see Jessica Tisch staying on board, whether the NYPD is at the top of the hierarchy or not.
I mean, it's a fair point. I think that's why she wants to stay on board. I think, because, but like, why hasn't she addressed those social media influencers like harassing cops? Is because she doesn't know. She never did it. Like, it's very easy for me or you to get up there, or Marlon or Sal, to be like, oh, what should we do? Like, this is what you guys should do when someone comes up with a phone in your face. You instruct them that they're interfering with police services, your ability to provide services to the people in New York City. You instruct them 3 times that if they do not get out of your face and leave, or if they come within your zone of safety, they're going to be placed under arrest for harassment of a police officer, for disorderly conduct, and for OGA. And then guess what? When they don't do it, you place them under arrest. That's it. End of story. If they fight with you, you use force to put them into friends. If you get a CCRB as a result, don't worry about it. Just be professional. I have the final authority. You're not going to have a problem. Don't worry about it. You know what I mean? And I'm going to instruct the DAs that they better draw it up. And if they don't draw it up, I'm going to use my bully pulpit to say, this is what happens in New York City. You know why you don't feel safe on the train? Because my officers are wasting time making arrests like this. And the district attorney of Manhattan isn't doing a damn thing about it. You know, but Jessica Tisch doesn't feel comfortable saying that because she's never been in that situation. So she doesn't know what to do. She doesn't know the law. She doesn't understand what's going to happen and how this process is going to work. She could see it from a top-down view, but she can't see it with her sitting there talking to the district attorney, her making the arrest, her going through the whole process, her going down to CCRP, where all of us can. You know what I mean? And so that's always going to be a knock on her. You know, it's like, well, you know, she doesn't understand, again, she doesn't understand the plight of the working man. She doesn't understand the plight of the rank and file cop. Now, you bring a guy like Issa Abbasi in, he does. Does that mean he's going to be much better? I don't think so. You know what I mean? Ed Caban understood it. What did he do? You know, I mean, what is any of Dermot Shea understood it very well. What has he done? What did he do? You know, I mean, like, we're just continuing to bring it down. And I totally agree with you, Marlon. It's a lot cheaper going this way of civilianizing the police. It's 100% cheaper, without a doubt. But it makes no sense. And there's like literally, there is no evidence to like base off the fact that we should move in this direction. I mean, it's literally like, although it's cheaper, it's literally like I could get more bang for my buck by taking all my money out of my bank account and heating my home for the winter by burning it on fire, because like the result you're having on public safety is going to have a negative effect. It's not like going this way of these civilianized police reforms is ensuring more corruption, more crime, more violence, and we're paying to do it. You know, so although it might be cheaper in the short term, it's going to be a lot more expensive in the long term because you're going to continue to lose your tax base. You're going to continue to lose businesses. And the quality of life in New York City is going to erode to a point that we're going to be 1970s New York. And hey, it'll be great for guys like Bill Ackman that could come in and buy buildings for pennies on the dollar, you know? And then guess what? They'll get a police commissioner, Eric Dim, to come in, and he'll bring back this great broken windows theory thing called, and he'll have this great idea to bring in these anti-crime teams. And then next thing you know, you'll be living in New York City again. Your kids will be living in New York City again. They'll be like, yeah, it's great here.
Yeah. I think we're thinking they actually care about, the safety of the peasants on the street. I don't think they do. Remember, these people live in areas that aren't, it's not like they're living in Brownsville. They're living in areas that are far kind of different, in terms of the public safety on the street. And the issues that they have to deal with in terms of quality of life. And if there's an issue of quality of life in their neighborhood, they just pick up the phone call and it gets done, So I don't think it's the same thing. And I don't think these guys are thinking long term either. Because again, I'm going to point out what Trump is doing now, with those 50-year mortgages and the rumored 15-year loan for a car. They're not thinking about long term. They're thinking about the present day and solving their present day issues. And the present day issue in terms of the city is a fiscal problem. I'm seeing slowly it's being talked about now. I see Jim Walden's mentioning it now. So that train is coming it's coming today. It's not coming like 10 years. If they degrade the quality of policing in the city and, you're getting lawsuits, the city's facing lawsuits, well, that's not their problem. That's 10 years from now, and that those lawsuits are going to play out in the future and they'll deal with that in the future. I think they're looking strictly at the here and the now. And I'm going to say that they also don't care about potential corruption because they believe they can manage all of this. And they believe that tools like body cameras that can watch you, that they can follow in real time from 1PP, all the tracking tools, all the analytical tools, AI monitoring all of, everything a cop is going to do. they believe they could mitigate all of that and manage all of this. And Abbasi is not too different either, based on what he's doing in Patterson, what he's done in Patterson with their technology, and the fact that this guy comes from strategic initiatives in the NYPD, which is like the head of the snake for all of these technocratic, analytical, stuff.
Well, you make some great points, and I've said it for a long time. The reason also that Eric Adams never wavered or feared the mass exodus is because ultimately AI and robotics is a tool that is going to take over law enforcement anyway. We're just in my opinion, we're just in hopes that the human element is going to be recognized, that it's so important that the human element can't go away. You know, I've said it numerous times, AI and robotics should supplement and be the tool to assist the human element as law enforcement. But I do think that AI and robotics will take over so much that it won't matter anyway. And it's cost effective. It's immediate responses. However, I get what you're saying about Abbasi, but I think that Jessica Tisch is data driven. She's already the technological guru. She's the elite in this. Now we see the truth that nobody cares that she's Jewish and he's or he's Palestinian or Muslim, whatever he is, or he never apologized for talking about global intifada. None of that matters because they're all elites. That's what's the most important thing here. She is a media elite. She is just a pure elite. He's also an elite. So there's common ground there. And the bottom line is they're looking to change the entire culture of the NYPD. She was never part of the culture. So it's much easier of a transition. And to me, it just makes sense. It makes sense completely. Do I think she will stay on for the entire tenure? Absolutely not. I think it's going to go far off anyway, where she's going to get to a point where she's ready to climb off and rocket fuel into her political career. But other than that, I see her staying on. If I was a betting man and betting right now, I say Jessica Tisch is staying on.
The other thing is, it appears she has a strong connection to the Trump administration. Is that through Ivanka Trump? I don't know, but they're about the same age. They run in the same circles. I mean, it appears to me that there's a connection there to Trump, and could Mamdani's administration benefit from having a pipeline to the Trump administration? And I think the answer is 1000% yes, right? Like, so we saw that Jessica Tisch got tipped off when ICE was going to do those raids, and she let her officers stay out of the area. She actually kept the NYPD back, which I think is wrong. Not that they need to be assisting in the civilian enforcement, but they have the obligation to protect and preserve life on New York City streets, and they failed to do that at that point. So I think that was wrong. But the thing that I'm saying is, as far as New York City needs federal funds, Trump has threatened he's going to pull federal funds. I don't think Trump's pulling federal funds. I mean, people will die as a result of that. I mean, does he need any more bad publicity at this point? I don't know. If he's looking for it, then he'll do it. So, but to have a working relationship with New York City, I think he wants that. And I think, whatever the political theater happens, from Gracie Mansion all the way up to the White House, that'll happen out for us to blab about on here. But behind the scenes, they'll be laughing, drinking, and toasting it up, and telling him, let them eat cake, So I think there's a strong connection there, and I think it benefits him to keep her. So I don't know. I'm not 100% convinced that she's going to be the police commissioner, but it makes sense to me that he would want her, and it makes sense to me that she would want to stay just because she knows she's going to have an easy ride of things. Because she's had one great. I mean, look at the Adams administration. It's a complete disaster, and she's had an easy ride of it.
I think it benefits her to stay because I think she has a relationship with Wall Street, and she has a relationship with the Police Foundation, which again is Wall Street's funnel into the police department. And we know her family basically ran the police foundation for years, I think it was her uncle, maybe Andrew Tisch, was the one who was the head of it. But yeah, she has a relationship with Wall Street, and I think a lot of the press that we're seeing now to get her to stay, it may not necessarily be coming from her. I think at least some of it is coming from those interests in Wall Street, just because they've had a relationship with her for all these years, and that relationship has been what's fostered things like the all that technology, like. And she's, just so you guys were watching those, she's been behind a lot of things, like the Shot Spotter, body cam, smartphones, DOS, which is domain awareness system, and ECMS, which is it's for those of you who aren't cops. These are all databases that the police department uses. So she's been behind a lot of our technology, and I think because of that, she's built up a relationship with these companies and Wall Street, and they like her because she's their way into getting nice fat contracts with the NYPD. Yes, GI bro, I know what ECMS is. Thank you. But yeah. What else was I gonna say? Yeah, so I think the pressure is coming from a lot of other interests that want to keep her there, and obviously the New York elites and the media love her. So,
well, I think that's a key point with Jessica Tisch being police commissioner, is that everyone loves her. She somehow find this happy medium where the left loves Jessica Tisch, the right loves Jessica Tisch. We haven't heard anyone in the media, in the public eye, for the most part, say anything negative about Jessica Tisch. Now, I heard someone here, I saw someone in the comments say that if Jessica Tisch stays on as police commissioner for Zohran Mamdani, that it's going to be a bad look for her. It could hurt her image or something like that. Now, I don't see how that could be any different from her taking the assignment as police commissioner under Eric Adams. Eric Adams' entire administration was riddled with corruption. It still is. And Jessica Tisch took that job. I guess you could argue and say, well, the appearance is for her to take over, to be the crusader and just completely eradicate corruption. And if that was the case, well, she never met that mark, and she didn't have any achievements on that, because it's still riddled with corruption. It's still riddled with problems. Nepotism, if anything, probably got worse. I think morale is completely in the toilet. I speak to the cops all the time. Things only have progressively gotten worse, and under Jessica Tisch, it hasn't gotten any better. Morale is completely in the toilet right now. Now, clearly, Zohran Mamdani, that's not any of his concerns, not at all. To move forward, also, it's actually better for him if morale is in the toilet, to actually make this transition to where the NYPD is at the bottom of the pecking order and form this different type of policing, which we already have some signs of it. I think, John, you made a great point. With the Violence Interrupted program and the kiosk and other things like that, and other forms of AI and robotics that replace that human element, we're already meeting that mark. It's only going to just stink more in the toilet with morale. So that transition just makes it easier to get to the point where the NYPD is just a supplement and a tool itself for the public safety apparatus in New York City.
I mean, just think about that. In 2022, Eric Adams was telling you he was going to stop retail theft by putting a kiosk inside of a store so that the thief could go there and find services so they could dole out more of your tax money to them. So not only, you know what the thief was doing? He was probably robbing the store and then taking whatever items he wants and then going to the kiosk and see where he could get more free shit from and leaving, and then hopping on the train and the bus for free. So it was like the whole, like, so, and here's just the other part. Like, I don't think you're going to see anything drastic happen in policing immediately under Zohran Mamdani. Zohran Mamdani, we did an episode the other day. Is he de Blasio 2.0? He 100% is. So he's going to accomplish more than Eric Adams. He's got a lot better political insiders than Eric Adams had. Eric Adams' City Hall looked like a high school staff. I mean, there were a bunch of I don't even want to say the word, but there were a bunch of people that should have. There were a bunch of rejects, basically, that have no business being in the positions they were in. Most of them are gone. Some of them have lasted out. But like, the most unprofessional administration ever. So Zohran Mamdani's administration is going to look a lot more professional than Eric Adams. Is it going to be as funny? I don't know if it's going to be as funny, but there's going to be some dumb stuff that's going to happen, just like these kiosks and all this other stuff that he's going to accomplish in his first year, because city council's all on board already. He's going to bring in the universal child care. What's going to happen with the New York City Police Department? He's not going to want to hear stuff about public safety. He's going to want to sit there and say how a socialist DSA candidate could provide public safety in New York. So I think he's actually going to have a focus on keeping the crime numbers down. And who better to help keep the crime numbers down than keep a whole good old Jessica Tisch and Mike LaPetri in place, So I don't think you're going to see anything drastic here. The media is telling you he's going to ramp up Eric Adams' ideas 1,000 times. It's going to be, forget about it. It's going to be so much worse. I'm going to go out on a limb and say it might even be a lot better. I'm going to go out on a limb and say his public safety platform might be a lot better than Eric Adams, not because it's actually better. It's the same nonsense, but there might be more focus on making sure it's successful because you have more professional people in place. You have people that actually care and aren't just sitting there worried about where they're going to get their next free meal, or worried about what girl they're hitting on, or what new rookie they need driving them. So I think you could potentially see a better looking administration on the face of it. Will the same failures be going on? Will we continue to spend more money on the violence intervention program? Absolutely. Will we continue to watch the erosion of the numbers in the NYPD? Absolutely. I mean, no one has presented a plan to stop it at all. So, and it's not going to stop unless there's serious eyes on there that want to. But clearly, you heard from every Democrat on the ticket for the mayoral campaign, they have zero interest in retaining the current levels. They have zero interest in improving the morale. They have zero interest in making the NYPD a viable career profession. You're watching the managed decline of the NYPD currently. Will that continue under Zohran Mamdani? Absolutely. Regardless of who's the police commissioner.
Yeah, I really have to think about this, whether what changes are going to come immediately, and if there are, because I have to wonder how long before his base gets irritated with him, because the thing is, so what the Democrats have a habit of what they do like to do is displace all young people's anger on other things, right? And I think this whole Free Palestine thing. Now, granted, there was some legit protest in in regards to the situation over there. But I think in a lot of ways, the Democrats use issues to displace young people's anger and the anger they have in their lives right now. The fact that they can't afford things, they can't afford to even live in the city. I think the Democrats displace that anger so those young people aren't angry at them and angry at government. So, my question is, how long can they displace young people's anger about things? Because, Zohan can't bring neither the free buses or what else he promised, the government groceries. Those are all pie in the sky ideas that can't happen. So how long can he keep his base happy? And if you can't keep your base happy, he's gonna have to throw them something, to throw them some red meat somewhere in there to keep them, to keep them in line. And one of those promises he's made to them is the changes to the police department. So I really have to sit and think about this, because the question is that base is angry about their lives, and the Democrats need to displace it somewhere.
Some great points, brother, because the points that you're making is that the promises that he made, the platform that he actually got elected on, he actually can't carry out most of those promises. The only promise that he actually could carry out at this point without getting approval from city council or actually going through further legislation is the transition and the turning point for the NYPD, and turn the NYPD into the supplemental police force, which is what the young people want, right? That's obvious what these young people want, because there's a complete bias in the state for policing. from the majority of young people at this point. This idea that the police department can increase their numbers and get to a point that they were out is just completely fictitious, and it's not happening. It's virtually impossible at this point. I mean, we need to just completely clean house and turn things around to get to that point, and we're not at that point, even with Jessica Tisch as police commissioner. That's what's so odd about this, is that the left loves her, the right loves her, and if you ask me, what did she really do other than just fall in line? I don't see any changes made other than everything is masked and given an illusion. I mean, she played game by gaslighting the public and jumping to the cameras to talk about how great crime was when it came to, for instance, July 4th. She jumped on the bandwagon. She played ball with Eric Adams. Why wouldn't she play ball with Zohran Mamdani? I don't think it'll be any different. So, I mean, to what John's saying, you're right. Things could actually be better under Zohran Mamdani. I think in some ways, his ideas are so progressive that they might have to tail back and become regressive and put the police department back at that hierarchy, because if this just completely backfires, it just doesn't work at all. But time will tell. Time will tell. And I think this is one of those things that it's going to be an immediate appearance, whether it'll work or not. So the only question with that, though, is Jessica Tisch on board with Eric Adams is completely aware of masking and manipulating crime numbers. Is that going to continue with Zohran Mamdani? Because under Zohran Mamdani, if crime numbers are accurately depicted and documented, then we're going to see an increase in crime already. Immediate. We'll see an immediate increase in crime. And how will his constituents feel about it then? What will be the response from the Democrats at that point?
Yeah, I don't know, man. I know it's a lot of theater, and I don't think it really matters whoever sits in there. You know, I love when people are like, oh, the police didn't, you know, when they were talking about Adams police commissioner, like it was going to change anything. I was like, it doesn't matter who it is. Like, you care? Like, whoever it is, they're getting to talking. You're going to do X, Y, Z, blah, 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 blah. You know, that's it. So I guess we could wrap this segment up. You guys got anything else on Tisch? I don't know. I think I could see benefits for both of them for them staying. Not 100% sure that she's staying. But again, I don't really think it matters anyway. I think it's just more of the same agenda you have here. You know, I think if she doesn't stay, it'll be a lot more fun in the papers and in the media, and you're going to see a lot more hype and a lot more fear mongering. So in a way, I hope she doesn't stay, you know, because I want to see I want to see them actually report the news and actually report what the hell's going on instead of pushing narrative. So I don't know. Anything else on this topic before we get off?
Actually, I hope she stays because I got a lot of memes for that now, you know, and I want to see them two on a stage together and not. And see the discomfort, yeah. So I hope you stay, Jessica.
I don't think it matters at all. Wow, John actually just froze for a second, not me. I don't think it matters at all who's the police commissioner. As far as I'm concerned, you can take Ed Caban's face and put it on a cardboard cutout, put that at one police plaza. It'll be the same thing as you got right now, because whoever the police commissioner is going to beck and be a cuck for Zohran Mamdani. Zohran Mamdani, you want social workers to be at the top of the pecking order? Sure. You want us to actually have the 911 dispatchers determine who responds and what responds to calls? Sure, yeah. Even though these are dangerous things and don't make sense, they're going to do it. So take a cardboard cutout of Ed Caban, or pick the police commissioner's face that you like, put it on a cardboard cutout, put that in one police plaza. It's the same thing. It's the same. What did Jessica Tisch do differently that we've never seen before? I mean, Q teams. That's right. Yes. Q teams. That's original. We never saw police officers going out doing intrusive police work addressing quality of life. I believe that was called conditions. That's all we've seen is window dressing, and it's the same horse, different color under Jessica Tisch, but yet everybody loves it. Oh, it's amazing. What did she do? She removed a good portion of members of internal affairs, and they went back into other units and circled right back to internal affairs. What changes ultimately did Jessica Tisch do? I other than that she's got deep pockets, right? That's the change that we have. We have a police commissioner that has plenty of money on her own. She doesn't even need the job. But other than that, what did she do? Nothing. Nothing's going to happen. Nothing's going to change. Zohran Mamdani is going to leave her right where she's at. She played ball with Eric Adams, and Eric Adams is stupid. Zohran Mamdani, one thing I say, the kid's not an idiot. So he's going to be like, you know what? She's got deep pockets. She's going to play ball. She's staying on board. Why rock the boat when it's running? Why, don't break it if it's not, don't fix it if it's not broken.
Well, I will give you one accomplishment that I think that Jessica Tisch is going to accomplish. I'm hearing the CRT is going to be disbanded shortly. So the end of the khaki pants. So I would consider that an accomplishment. Not that I have anything against the people in CRT. I think that, like I said, I think that they were the proactive kids that wanted to work. I think a lot of them were Nepo babies, though, because they were just grabbing people with 4 months on, 5 months on with 2 collars, putting them in the unit. But I think it was an active, proactive unit. I just think they weren't trained properly. And I think they were doing stuff that they was really over their head at the point, and they should have became cops before. They should have learned to walk. They should have learned to crawl before they were running. They had these kids racing sprints. Meanwhile, they didn't even learn the job yet. So I think that was a huge failure. But that was on the part of Eric Adams, because as much as he was trying to put his progressive socialist, all these nonsensical public safety strategies out there, he ultimately knew the only way to really keep crime down is to engage in proactive broken window style policing. And so he just had those one group of young kids who had clean records, and he had their records, and he basically protected their records and kept them safe from the CCRB and kept them safe from IEB and everything else. And so, I think that was the plan. It was like their little secret team that they were going to use to clean up the streets in New York City. But ultimately, it failed on its face because it was bound to fail on its face. It was a dumb idea. And it should have just been done with skilled, knowledgeable supervisors and cops like it always was in the past. So, I think Eric Adams broke that. But yeah, that's what I'm hearing. I'm hearing CRT will be disbanded shortly.
Yeah, I said it before. I think a lot of the cops in there were Nepo babies for a fact. But I think a lot of the supervisors in there were like great cops. Like we're talking like great anti-crime cops, great FIOs that they pulled in and basically figured that these guys would help teach these young rookies how to become good, good gun cops. But I'm gonna say I said it before. The khaki pants were a response.
You know who the supervisors were? Because I know 2 of them that I could think of on the top of my head that I don't even think have a business in the police department. Never mind training 2 young rookies.
Oh no! Don't get me wrong.
Some of them were good supervisors. I'm not saying all of them, but like I could think of 2 that were very close to the upper echelon. That were like you're making these kids train rookies. You're looking for corruption scandals. Like
I agree with that. The problem with the department is over time, all great ideas they start out great, but then they become dumping ground for Nepo babies. Like these units. When they first thought of, they were great ideas in the beginning, and then what happens slowly over time is everyone realizes how well these guys are being treated, what resources they have, and such and such, and then they become dumping grounds for Nepo babies who don't have the skills to get there. Now I wasn't on the job before in the 90s, but I've heard that from old timers that one of the things that drove street crime, one of the things that kind of ruined it is that they kind of grew the unit too fast, and whereas it was a smaller, more it was a smaller unit with very very skilled guys in there. Eventually, they realized how good it was and decided to put more guys in there, and inevitably, what happens is it becomes a dumping ground for guys who didn't have the skill to be there in the first place, or they were pushed there too quickly, and that happens to a lot of units in the NYPD over time. I've seen it multiple times. But I said it before that the khaki pants initiative was a response to the progressivism that was running amok, and like crime was getting out of hand. And I think that the decision was made that we got to do something, because these things are getting out of hand. But we got to do it in a way that the public won't realize that Eric Adams is basically do it in a way that it won't ruin Eric Adams 1.0's reputation as a progressive. You know, so just a thought.
Listen, criminal response team, take care, sayonara. I have no problem seeing them go. I mean, listen, the majority of them are pretty good. Their heart's in the right place. Do they lack training? Absolutely. As far as I'm concerned, the ideology behind the khaki pants was to be a quasi-anti-crime team. We were sold this idea from Eric Adams that the neighborhood safety teams would be the quasi-anti-crime team, but really it was the khaki pants. And it was too far, too fast. You're absolutely right. And we didn't have guys that were completely educated and actually trained in doing that type of police work. These guys were thrown in with 2 or 3 years on the job. 2 or 3 years on the job was considered a lot, being in those khaki pants with supervisors that didn't have the experience themselves. And some of them, as John and I spoke about, we won't mention names, had no business being there at all. So it was just a complete disaster, I think. And then ultimately, because of nepotism, they also destroyed morale too. I spoke to numerous cops throughout the city, and pretty much it was a dump job where some of these khaki pants would just make a collar, drop it off at the desk in certain precincts throughout the city, and just leave. So absolutely terrible for morale also. You know, as someone mentioned here that we basically couldn't make a comment about it because the loss of Detective Diller. That's absolutely not true. I think that to honor Detective Diller, we should be honest about this unit. It's an extreme amount of failures. Were there some good people in there? I knew some people myself that are in that unit that are experienced, right? There are some outliers in that unit. But unfortunately, the overwhelming majority that are in the khaki pants unit were not prepared and not ready to do that type of police work. And especially the fact that they were engaged in such high prolific car pursuits, which is completely anti anything that makes sense to keep the cops safe and also the public. It was out of control. It was out of control. And this was just, for me, the khaki pants was just to create an image for John Schell and to propel him for the chief of department. That's really all it was meant. It was meant for him and Kaz Daughtry. That's really what it was meant for. Could the khaki pants unit have been a great thing? Absolutely. If it was done properly. And you're right, Marlon. I agree. Grow it slowly, right? Get, hand-picked, skilled people. But as John and I did a podcast talking about the failures of it, and then ultimately the DOI had put out a report that was completely vague, but that report did prove exactly what John and I were saying for a long time, that people were not exactly handpicked. They were put there. It wasn't documented properly. They didn't even know how many people were actually in that unit. So it was a failure on the leadership. Failure. I don't blame a cop with 2 years on the job. You have an opportunity to get that unit. They're not going to turn it down. But it's really upon the leadership to make sure that they're trained, to get the proper training to be in that unit and understand how, the vast amount of accountability that you have when you're in a unit like that, especially when you're running around and you're doing assertive and aggressive, intrusive police work. You need experience, and ultimately you need an extreme amount of discipline, and that discipline takes time.
I totally agree. I agree. I think that was really like an overstep. But again, I think that had a lot to do with Eric Adams. Like he doesn't really know a lot about policing either. You know what I mean? He knows a lot about sitting behind the desk. He knows a lot about being a desk officer. But like as far as like actual policing, engaging in proactive police work, I mean, the guy has made less than 10 arrests. He doesn't understand the arrest process. He doesn't understand vouchering. He doesn't understand affecting proactive arrest. He doesn't understand how to keep a community safe. He just doesn't. He knows how to collect a check, how to keep his uniform clean, and how to make entries in the book. Like, that's what he knows. I'm sorry. Like, you could spend your entire career in policing and not understand public safety. You could spend 25, 30 years in policing and not get the big picture about what's happening in the police department, and I think that that's Eric Adams. So I love when people are like, oh, he was a cop. He knows what he's doing. It's like, well, he was a cop, but clearly I don't know any cop that thinks that. I don't know any cop that with a brain on their head and inside of their brain, inside of their skull, that thinks that if you put a kiosk with social services in a store, that will prevent anyone from robbing any items from that store. I don't know anyone that thinks that civilians should police protests and parades. I don't know anyone that thinks a transit cop should work by themselves. I don't know any cop that thinks it was a good idea to lower the overall head count of the NYPD. I don't know one cop that thinks it was a good idea to get rid of me, Marlon, Eric, Sal for absolutely no reason. I don't think anybody thinks that was a good idea. And there are thousands of guys just like me, Eric, Marlon, and Sal, who are still in shape, still sharp, still understand what the hell goes on, and still have an eye for police work. And Eric Adams thought it was a good idea to not only force us out of the profession, but then keep us out, violate all of our city, all of the laws, all of our constitutional rights, and all the due process law. So I just don't think that he has a lot of foresight. I don't think he understands his environment well. And I think when it comes to public safety, Eric Adams is a huge failure. He knows about as much as Zohran Mamdani does when it comes to public safety. I don't give a shit that he put on that bulletproof vest, because he was useless when it was wearing it.
Yeah, I agree. And I see your comment, class 83-11, and I agree with you. And my point was simply that the product had been diluted by expanding the unit too quickly by the late 90s. But I agree with you. Eric Adams clueless about policing, and I think in a large part a lot of the upper echelon are kind of clueless about policing too, because the problem is that a lot of them were never like active cops when they were in the bag and on the street. And a lot of them have been too far gone from being from the streets, And I think one of the issues in the NYPD and policing in general now is too much reliance on academics and thinking that you could use all these technocratic tools to basically replace meat and potatoes policing on the street. And what we've seen in a lot of ways in like the NYPD is that thinking. And I don't think it served us well. And I believe they still think they can do it. And this is what Tisch thinks. And this is why you get somebody like Tisch, who's been considered, who is now PC and being considered for peace to remain being PC, as opposed to somebody who was actually a cop. Okay, I think it kind of devalues the profession. And again, it moves us further away from meat and potatoes, actual, human policing that we've done for decades. Okay, and it just doesn't serve the city well. So
it seems to me that it's been the template for the Democrats, especially Eric Adams, to put weak, inept leadership in the NYPD, so that it does become an ultimate failure. Because if it's an ultimate failure, it gives better reasoning and better articulation of why we're going to tailor it down, and it become a supplemental tool to the community safety plan, and not the hierarchy of policing, and not the actual apparatus of the public safety plan for New York City. It also allows more penetration of AI and robotics, because ultimately it's a failure because of a mass exodus. We have a failure of police operations. Well, it could be done better by AI and robotics. And I mean, we heard the success of the drones, just, so amazing by Kaz Daughtry. But ultimately, that's why they don't care about the recruiting and not really concerned about the mass exodus, because AI and robotics is the tool to actually take over. And you're right. Most of these academics clearly don't understand about policing. It's the human element that is the best and most effective tool to do intrusive police work, despite any AI and robotics as a supplemental tool. That is the most important thing. But in order to have that human element, you need to have the right cops. And that doesn't necessarily become an academic degree. So maybe the only good thing Jessica Tisch did do, in addition to removing the khaki pants, was lowering the college credits for entry, because that is not necessarily, in my opinion, a significant and important tool for policing. We need good men and women that have those alpha masculine traits, that have a background in New York City and understand the animal of New York City. That's really, it's just people that understand what the people of New York City are like, what the elements of New York City are like, how New York City moves and breathes, because it is a different animal. It's much different than other places. And for that, we need the right people. And the right people is not necessarily someone with an academic degree, but people that have been in the streets of New York City.
Yeah. So last night, Upper East Side, there was a shooting rarely ever see shootings there. Police involved shooting. Man was acting crazy, saying he was going to shoot up a hospital. Cops responded, and cops did what they had to do. The police officers weren't hurt, thankfully. So they still tried to resuscitate and bring the guy to the hospital. They actually threw him in the R&P and brought him to a hospital to try to save his life, and he wasn't able to. So he met his demise based upon his own actions. I'm sure, the progressive left in New York City will say that they failed to de-escalate, but I think they did a great job. So there was that. And then the other night in Brooklyn, 2 nights ago in Brooklyn, this happens. A landlord for this building in Ditmas Park, he sees a man stealing packages. Now, for those of you that worked in policing, or those of you that live in New York City, or those of you that don't know, I mean, when the holidays come, people order a lot of gifts to their front door, right? So traditionally throughout New York City, I don't care if you're in a dangerous part of New York City, I don't care if you're in affluent in New York City, and for the most part, package thefts happen more in affluent neighborhoods, where you'll have perps that'll follow UPS trucks and FedEx trucks, and as they drop off all the stuff that people are ordering, they'll steal from their doorstep, stay behind the truck. So that was something that, like, when we were actually the police, we used to focus on in precincts throughout New York City. We used to follow those UPS trucks from a very far distance. I've personally made a lot of arrests for this. And when the arrests weren't initially made, they were investigated. They went to the squad, reports were taken. Those reports went to the squad. Squad did video canvas, tracked down, got license plate, and actually apprehended the perps. That is not happening any longer in New York City. So, when we talk about Zohran Mamdani's plan, where he's saying that he wants to eliminate misdemeanor arrest, this is what he's saying. He's saying that you're going to be left to fend for yourself when someone takes your package, because we're not going to take a report for you. And if we do, it'll be dumbed down. I say you ordered a Rolex to your front door, you're not getting it. It's going to get stolen. It'll be dumbed down to a felony, to a misdemeanor from a felony grand larceny. It won't be investigated, and the perp will go completely unapprehended. So you will be left to fend for yourself. And this is a result of moving away from enforcing minor crimes. So this landlord now loses his life because instead of doing his job, which is to take care of the building, ensure the heat's working, the AC's working, the areas are clean, toilet bowls are working, people have running water, he actually now has to also be security guards, even though these people pay a high amount of taxes in New York City to have the police department keep them safe. So this is a result of moving away from broken windows theory. This was an avoidable tragedy. And this is, again, another murder that falls at the feet of this failed far left progressive Democrat policy. It fails. Like, this is the direction we're going. This isn't Zohran Mamdani's New York City. This is Eric Adams' New York City. This was Bill de Blasio's New York City. This is a result of that. What do you guys think about this? Do you agree that this could have been avoided, and we should be, and the NYPD should be focusing, especially this time of year during the holidays, should be focusing on package thefts from front door? It leads to bigger things.
Yeah, I agree, and it's worthy to point out that part of Zohan's Department of Community Safety plan includes these civilians responding to trespassing, and we talked about it last week on the Executive Perspective, how a lot of these incidents, these kind of nonviolent 911 calls, nonviolent, because police calls have the potential to quickly go sideways. And here you're clearly seeing an example of it, And keep in mind, there's no report that a weapon was used in the altercation. And again, the Mamdani wants these civilians to respond to calls to trespassing or unwanted person calls, provided there's no threat of violence or weapons. So here we see clearly an example where what could possibly happen to a civilian responders. So I hope you plan to give him some good health care there, Zohan. We know you're watching. But this episode could easily also have been titled how Zohan's plan for the DCS is destined to fail. Okay, because this is just a clear example of it, and I don't think a lot of these problems get solved without meat and potatoes policing, and that includes having precincts well staffed with cops who are walking foot posts in a lot of these areas, or have the time to actually do proactive policing instead of going from job to job to job. So.
Well, that's absolutely spot on, brother, because I always say that in my opinion, there's no such thing as non-lethal force in comparison to lethal force, right? Sometimes we hear, well, the police officers should use non-lethal tools in a situation. And I believe that all tools that the police department utilizes, even your fist, ultimately could turn into something lethal. It minimizes the chances. So if we talk about interaction with a social worker having with a potential perpetrator or adversary, to me, there's no such thing as, well, this is a violent or a non-violent call. To me, it's a matter of if it's maintained or not maintained. And how does it get maintained? By good men and good women in a police uniform, carrying a firearm and carrying those tools that are necessary to maintain a situation. Because even a situation of petty theft, if social workers are to respond to a CVS or a Walgreens because someone is stealing something as minimal as deodorants, well, that person could be emotionally invested that day, or something else could be going on. And as I said on a previous episode, in most cases, anyone having an interaction with the police, 99 times out of 100, they are emotionally disturbed. That doesn't mean they're emotionally disturbed for their entire lives, but those moments, they're emotionally disturbed. Some of us, we all are emotionally disturbed at some point in our lives. If you're having a domestic dispute with your significant other, you're emotionally disturbed at that point, right? You're not acting rational. You're emotionally invested. This is something you're passionate about. And it also falls on this also, where the social workers can respond to something that they consider nonviolent, and that person stealing deodorant is having a bad day and also sees that person as an obstacle, impeding their ability to actually get to the next point and get out of that situation. So that's almost, it's almost like unlawful imprisonment by the social workers, right? Because the social workers are not looking to make the arrest, where the police officers are actually looking to make an arrest. It's a complete different mission. I think this is absolutely dangerous to the public. It's dangerous to the social workers. I've said on prior episodes, you won't just need a good medical plan. You're going to need body bags. And I'm sure there's social workers right now who want nothing to do with this because they know the reality. Even though they have a full bias and disdain for police work and for police themselves, they don't want any part of it because this is some scary stuff. You don't know what's going to happen. Every 911 call or every interaction is just a mystery. It's a mystery. And as I said before, it's not a matter of lethal or non-lethal or violent or non-violent. It's maintained or not maintained. And it's the men and women in those uniforms with those guns and with the tools that maintain a situation.
Yeah, I mean that Marlon pointed this out yesterday on X. He put out there, all the stuff that he wants civilians responding to, and it's 100% what you're saying, Eric. Like, you don't really know what's going to be violent and not. Mental health crisis and suicidal ideation. To me, that's a violent call. If you never responded on that call, you don't think that's a violent call. The potential for violence is at every single one of those calls. Calls involving intoxicated or substance using persons. Violent call. The violent call. The potential for violence is there. He's saying these are non-violent. Police disturbances or breach of conduct calls. Same thing. Sorry, I just heard something. Police disturbances or breach of conduct calls. How do you know what that's violent until we get there? And what is that? That's basically every 911 call that could be there. Trespassing or unwanted burglaries, potential for burglary. I know progressives think that burglary is not a violent call, is not a violent crime, but if you're home and someone breaks in your house, guess what? That is a violent crime. The potential for violence is there. If they're looking to sneak in the back window and just steal things, I guess you could kind of say, well, then, they're not really violent people. Well, but what happens when you're there? What happens when the old lady's there and the guy's home and he's like, oh man, I'm her neighbor. I don't want her to tell anyone. Guess what happens? Grandma's gone, right? Now it turns into a violent call. And, basic needs assistance. What does that mean? Neighbor disputes, violent call. I mean, how many neighbor disputes turn violent? So again, I think continuing down this path just leads to more destruction, leads to less quality of life, leads to people not trusting the police, leads to a lesser service. You're calling 911 and you're saying, what the hell am I paying for? What am I paying for? Who are these people that are showing up? Who is this violence intervention or this Department of Community Safety? And what do I need them for? They're not doing anything. My neighbor just threatened to kill me. You're not going to arrest them? My neighbor punched me in the face. Where are the police?
Yeah. And they don't even have to have a weapon for it to be turned deadly, as you see here. So I see a comment on X from a John. I think sounds like a new viewer, but welcome, John. We appreciate your insight, and we appreciate these new comments from new viewers. But John says, I agree with Ron. He's referring to last week's. I don't know if he's referring to the chat or last week's executive perspective, but he said Kelly was the last autonomous PC had complete power. Now, I think that I'm going to say that the reason why Kelly was the last that seemed to have last PC that seemed to be autonomous is because they're trying to do two things here at once, and it's not working. And the PC will never be autonomous again, because if the PC is autonomous, then the PC is strictly making decisions on a public safety perspective, and that's not what they want. Again, I'm going to go back to what I said, that I think progressivism is a cover for diminished government services that are cheaper for government. And if you have an autonomous PC, he's making decisions for public safety, strictly for public safety. And that is not what the mayor wants right now. The mayor wants cuts to public safety, but he doesn't want the public to be aware of what those cuts are. So because each one of these mayors want to do the same thing. And because of that, you'll never get an autonomous PC again. So, so I think that's a great comment, John. And it's just got my brain juices there thinking about that for a second.
Well, I love it when we get new friends, new listeners to the network. So for that, John, thank you so much. I appreciate it. So I've said this on prior episodes. I'm going to say it again. And now that we actually put out that plan of what the social workers will respond to, in fact, I believe that not only will this just be a disaster for the public, I actually think this is going to create more violence for the police department and the public. Why? Because unless the social workers are completely trained and they're carrying firearms and uniforms, which would look like police, who are they going to call when those situations we just told you that are violent will get violent and they will turn ugly? Who are they going to call to respond? And when things are already have been escalated, they're going to call the NYPD. So there's going to be numerous 1085s and 1013s. So for the most part, most people know what a 1013 is. For our friends and listeners, if you're active retired NYPD, you know what a 1085 is. For different law enforcement agency out there, 1085 is where cops need assistance. So these social workers will need assistance. A neighbor dispute, John, we've seen some of the ugliest neighbor disputes. They can get ugly, especially in New York City where people live on top of each other. Just a dispute over someone's lawn, or a dispute about who's throwing out the garbage in a building. These things can turn ugly, especially if they're ongoing and emotions are high and invested. And what do we know? When the authority responds, and that's what Zohran Mamdani doesn't understand with this plan. When the police respond to a situation and emotions are high, people don't start to calm down. In fact, they become more violent and they actually start to argue even more, and emotions get heightened. Why? Because the men and women are there in blue to protect the situation, so people actually feel more emboldened. They feel more emboldened, and people start to actually get heightened excitement in situations. So you guys know exactly what I'm talking about. When the police respond, the arguments sometimes heighten even more because you're there as an audience and you're there for protection in case it gets out of hand. So, in fact, I do think this is going to create more violence. And it's interesting because the Democrats often talk about de-escalation. This is actually going to escalate situations because the police are going to respond to situations that already heightened. So, we can expect our police officers to be put in vulnerable positions and actually expect them to get even more civilian complaints because they're going to already respond to violent and situations that have already escalated, where force will have to be used.
You're muted. See, it wasn't me today, guys.
Wow. I did a
It's
Marlon.
your turn.
Not
Your
yet.
turn.
Marlon. Sorry, I was freezing. I had to get a jacket. But just one thing on the Ray Kelly thing, like, I don't think that Ray Kelly was autonomous. I think he was just in at the opportune time. And I think what proved that is Bill Bratton. Because I think Bill Bratton was in at the opportune time originally, and that's how he became a legend in the police department. And then now, as you see him like still hanging on to the profession and really just being a politician grifter at this point, and like he'll sway whichever way the big money wants him. Say that this is going to bring crime down. Say that this is a good idea. Say this. Like he'll literally just go against all of his morals. And so his second term, you've seen two different versions of Bill Bratton. And, you know, for a lot of the guys under Eric Adams and on the guys under de Blasio, I said it. I was like, listen, I know that they're in a bad position because Ray Kelly didn't really have to deal with that. Bill Bratton really didn't have to deal with that on his first term because the way that the city was headed was in the direction of public safety. There was a focus to bring crime down, and they were given more autonomy. But it wasn't because the mayor's hand wasn't there. It was just that the mayor was on board with the mission. So, like, I listen, I don't think that John Schell is a rocket scientist by any stretch of the imagination. But I could see under a different Giuliani administration, him being portrayed a lot differently. You know what I mean? Like him actually, the rank and file not loving him. I mean, you know, did they love any chief ever? Maybe not, but like respecting him more, being more respectable because his messaging is going to be consistent because all of the messaging from the mayor's office is consistent. You know, he went from, he went from everything's good, don't worry about it, crime's down, to no, we brought crime down, to no, we want migrants, we honor migrants, to no, we're going to go after these migrant gangs. And like he just kept flipping whatever Eric Adams was saying. So that and that's what happens with all these police commissioners. If your mayor's consistent, they're consistent. So I just think that Kelly was in an opportune time. And I think, you know, listen, he came out and endorsed Andrew Cuomo, the father of bail reform, man that released 43 cop killers back out onto our streets. I'm like, you know what? I'm not with that. Like he was this great police commissioner either. I just think he was there at an opportune time. The wave was right. He rode it into shore. So I think that holds true for everyone. I don't think you get a guy with integrity. I don't think you get a guy with a spine. I don't think you get a person that is truly an autonomous person to run any department in any Democratic city across this country. I think the only way you're going to get a guy like that is if he's an elected sheriff. If you're an appointed police manager at this point, you know, it's safe to say, I don't care what city you are in this country. I don't care what your resume looks like. I don't care what you did for 30 years. Doesn't matter to me. You are not your own person. You're basically you're like Greg Kelly. You're going to bash people when they tell you to bash them, and you're going to love people when they tell you to love them. You know, you have a man with a hand up your butt and he moves your mouth for you. That's just what it is. I'm sorry. Like, I used to say that I thought Ray Kelly was great, and now I'm just like, you know what? I just think the mayor was a lot better.
Interesting. Yeah, I'm gonna say it's a lot easier to get both the mayor and the PC on the same page together when things are good, you know. And during the Bloomberg era, New York City most definitely had kind of crossed the I mean, we had gotten past the crack era of the early 90s and like, you know, the leftovers in the late 90s, and New York City was growing, and we were getting businesses and people, and money was flowing in the city. So I think it was different circumstances, and I think it was easy for the mayor and the PC to be on the same page, because you need you wanted to continue that same. First, the money was there, so the money was there, and Bloomberg understood that you needed you needed that high quality of life to keep pulling in businesses. Whereas now the money isn't there, and I think the mayor is fighting public perception, and the money isn't there to do a lot of things, and he still has to fight the public perception, and they're trying to get over us on like this whole civilianizing the police thing. And what was I gonna say else? But yeah, I agree with you, John, and I said my thing is I think that now the PC should be a sheriff, and that this is why I think we've come to a point where that's the only way we can get a autonomous PC again.
Yeah, I think we all agree on that. We all spoke about the PC should be a sheriff and someone as an elected official. And to break it down even further, I also said I believe each borough should be its own police department and have its own elected official on the borough level for each borough. I think it would be much better for funding. I think it would alleviate a lot of potential corruption, and I think we would have better leadership because they wouldn't be pandering, and they would actually be competing with each other for to do better with crime and for professionalism. So it might actually be a healthy competition amongst each borough. And because each borough is its own county, right? Unlike other cities where cities incorporate a county. For New York City, it's 5 counties that actually incorporate a city. With that being said, I think that Bloomberg, and also I think that Ray Kelly benefited from the timing that it was post 9/11. At that time, New York was much more favorable of the police department at the height of 9/11. And it did last for some years after that, because Ray Kelly had the police department doing intrusive police work, which ultimately works, but it was much more supported by the city at the time, and especially in a post 9/11 era. So I do believe that if there were times where just like they are right now, I think you would see a different Bloomberg, and with a different Bloomberg, you would see a different Ray Kelly. So I think it was the time of New York City, and it was the atmosphere and the vibe of which in New York City, it was a much different place than it is right now.
Yeah. So here's another non-violent incident that happened, right? So this is what Zohran Mamdani doesn't want the police to respond to anymore, right? So and again, but I'll take you back to 2021. I don't need to play the clip again. You guys seen it, of Eric Adams saying that he didn't want cops responding to these situations either. So here you go. This is the NYPD responding to a calls for help. A person in crisis experiencing an emotionally disturbed incident, jumps in the water. Here's what the police do. Now, mind you, November 11th, 3 days ago, it was freezing. Mind you, what's your Department of Community Saving? What are your civilians doing? How are they getting help there? What does that look like? I'll show you what it looks like here. This is what this and FYI, the potential for violence here is very high, even though no violence was deployed.
Yo! Central, you're about to go in the water. You're about to go in the water, Central. Central, notify him. Also notify them that
Watch yourself.
All right, take one. Can you swim? But we need all the units. Okay, 10-4. Just to be advised, we have one MOS in the water. Okay,
Come in. You good?
One MOS in the water. You said by the rocks, right? By the rocks? By a bike path? Of course, Central. It looks like the MOS is not her.
Yeah, Central, be advised. I'm West Carter. We're checking out of the water now.
Okay, 10-4. You can be advised they're pulling her out of the water right now.
Yeah, let's get EMS to those locations.
Okay, 10-4.
I got you. Here, take my hand. You good? Help her up. Help her up. Here, give me that hand. Give me that hand.
I mean, do you think that you're going to get that same type of response from a civilian?
Yeah. No way. So yeah. Again, we're only gonna get a better New York City if we get more cops on the street. We need more of that and less trying to do things some newfangled way or trying to do things for cheaper.
Simply E says it right here. Pretty funny. Social workers should also be scuba certified. Ultimately, that's what they're telling you. That you know what's funny, Marlon? We've been saying it's actually going to be cost effective to have civilians. It might actually be in some cases when it comes to training, cost ineffective because they're going to have to be trained in weapons. What type of weapons are they going to carry? What type of uniforms? What type of apparatus are they going to have to transmit and communicate, right? What type of radios they're going to have? Ultimately, they're going to have to look like a police force. So no matter what, maybe at some point, Zohran Mamdani, the Democratic Party, will come to the realization, like, wait a minute, this just doesn't work. It becomes its own police force. I mean, we saw it with Chop and Chaz in Seattle and Portland during the height of COVID with the riots, where they tried to form their own area without policing, and it became more violent and actually more brutal and more authoritative and more of a police force than the actual police force. And that's what's going to happen here. I believe that this will actually have to be more authoritative and more assertive than the police department because they just don't have the training, the understanding, and the discipline. The NYPD is established for years, right? It's a system. And we have police officers that are trained that go into that system. This is brand new. There is no social worker system apparatus. So I just think this falls flat in his face. But you know what? If they want it, if there's social workers that want to do this, be prepared to go into that water. Hero on that cop. Awesome job. Great job. Save that person for the day. Now, I hope that, some of these social workers have a couple of Michael Phelps on their team because they're going to need it.
No, yeah. I mean, dude, it's like, for all the crap that they talk about at the police, I mean, it never, you never see it, right? You see overwhelmingly 99.9% of the time, these guys do an unbelievable job, an unbelievable job in like really poor circumstances. That is probably one of the worst circumstances you could deal with. You got a girl who can't swim in a place where the current's real heavy and it's freezing out and you're wearing a uniform and the water's freezing cold. I mean, it's like, and then so, she could bring you under, we knocked a girl who went in after the perp, right? But he wasn't experienced, like his life wasn't in danger. Here, I think they did a great job. They did an unbelievable job. I mean, they're heroes. Everybody on that scene, they did a great job. They got the ambulance on time. You only get that through repetition, through years of training, where you're going to get all the pieces together, where you're going to be able to effectively communicate what's going on, get EMS there, and really keep everybody safe, right? Keep her safe, keep the other cops safe. And, and thankfully nobody lost their life in that picture. We just got a job offer though from John Giglio. He says 3 pretty smart guys here using all their time to talk about a deadbeat job that doesn't give a shit about you and close the door on all of you. I'd love to have you work on my security team. Good money. So I don't know, I don't think you got enough money for us, John, but we appreciate you listening, and so, thanks for weighing in and the job offer, but we're going to graciously turn you down. So, but thank you.
You never know. Could use a weekend gig.
Yeah. I see a comment in there from Drone Ranger. He says the biggest joke is PC Tisch sitting on the dais of Comstat every week, actually asking questions of squad commanders about things they did and didn't do in investigations. Yeah, I hope that's not the case, really. That should be the chief of department, or some other high-ranking chief, somebody who doesn't have experience on actual law enforcement or being a precinct commander, asking. It's very interesting if that's happening.
Yeah. Tiha says, you will see civil lawsuits against NYPD officers allowed to be brought to the point. Police just won't do their job. Again, it's occurring. that cycle, they already opened the door for that. They opened the door for that in 2020 when they got rid of qualified immunity. The city council, they voted on it. And then what you see is corporation counsel who makes a determination whether or not to represent officers. They only represent Eric Adams and their friends for their sex scandals and their corruption scandals. When it comes to actual law enforcement officers who are doing their job as per their training within the law, they have a very hard time getting indemnified. And that's been happening for a long time now. It's actually even before Eric Adams. It's just continuing to further. But I do agree with you. It will further under Zohran Mamdani. It stays in this direction. It just keeps going that way. So another thing that came up, Hiram Monserrati. So this is something that's been happened over the entirety of Eric Adams' administration, which is Roosevelt Avenue, right? Roosevelt Avenue, a place known for violence, place known for prostitution. It looks like it's like open air drug and prostitution market, and it's been for 4 years. And every 6 months, Kaz Daughtry, John Schell, Eric Adams go out there. They do walks. They come in with a team. One point, they did like a multi-agency response team there where they just displaced a crime. They did it, I think, for like 60 days. They displaced the crime for 60 days. And here you are, people continuously getting stabbed. So here's Hiram on Roosevelt Avenue yesterday talking about Roosevelt Avenue that supposedly Eric Adams has cleaned up about 7 times already.
Welcome to everyone. My name is Hiram Monserrat, the district leader here in Corona and East Elmhurst. And today we are on Roosevelt Avenue and 82nd Street, where recently there was a stabbing right here on the corner of 82nd and Roosevelt, where a gentleman was severely stabbed and is in critical condition. On the same day, 3 people were stabbed on 103rd Street and Roosevelt Avenue. So we are here with 3 requests. 1, we are asking that Governor Kathy Hochul bring the state troopers back to Roosevelt Avenue to make our community safer. 2, we're asking her to use her persuasion with our mayor-elect, Mayor Mamdani, to ensure that our police officer numbers are sufficient for the task at hand, and that we have here enough police officers patrolling Roosevelt Avenue. Finally, we are calling upon the governor and the state troopers of the state of New York to take control and custody of the NYPD gang database. The NYPD gang database, so that the state of New York can have it in their custody and provide that information to any police, law enforcement throughout the state of New York.
All right, he's not too smart, obviously, but I mean, what do you guys think about that? This is literally the 7th or 8th time this guy is calling for help on Roosevelt Avenue. I mean, I wouldn't take his ideas with a grain of salt, but like, what does this show? Does this show that the NYPD under Eric Adams is completely inept and can't get rid of street crime in one area?
I think it's a bigger problem. I think it's you need a whole of government approach to over there. You need multiple agencies to be on the same page, and certainly you need a prolonged effort from the NYPD rather than just like every 3 or 4 months we search that area with cops, and then 90 days later they go back to their former commands or new commands or wherever, or they're put to some different part of the city, and again we're never gonna at least solve the street level stuff over there. Now, prostitution will probably continue there, even if we solve the surface level stuff. It'll probably continue under the seams there unless other agencies get involved. But we're never gonna even address the surface level stuff if we don't have enough cops, and if we don't have enough cops to station there permanently.
So it's interesting, right? People fear Zohran Mamdani removing all these programs that the NYPD has for public safety plan, but Eric Adams already did it. If you remember, there's this amazing thing called multi-agency response coordinated hotspots. It was called the March program. It's called the March program, where the NYPD would respond to hotspots, bars, nightclubs, various locations, not just bars and nightclubs, but establishments with a multi-agency response. The NYPD, the fire department, the building department, to make sure things are up to code so that there's a response for the police department to maintain order. But who removed that? Eric Adams. Eric Adams removed the March program, right? We replaced it with a thing called CURE, right? We suspected that the reason why CURE was implemented is so that his buddies can make money, right? And Caban's brother, allegedly. But we removed the one thing that works there, the multi-agency response. So you definitely talk about multi-agency response. Now, the other problem, I think, is that surface level policing is not going to fix the problem, man. I've said that months ago. John said it too. We talked about it on a podcast, because all it does is displace that type of crime. They really need to get into the foundation of it, and that is human trafficking and what's going on behind it, and the gangs, the illegal military, the gangs like Tren de Aragua that's really behind that, funding it. Is they need a federal response to get to the gangs, the human trafficking, to stop the low-level policing. Just the presence alone, though, that type of policing, it's just picking off small arrests. It just masks it, and that's why it gives an illusion. It works for a couple of weeks, and then everything just comes right back, and it's just operation after operation, because it doesn't work on a surface level. So I believe in Marlon, when you talk about a multi-agency response, I would talk about the deep levels of what's going on there. Because otherwise, it's just displaced crime.
I mean, I listen. I think, do you need multi agencies to respond to in order to clean up Roosevelt Avenue? Yeah, but I don't think you need to go to the state. I think all those agencies are under mayoral control, and I just think they're completely inept in doing that. I think the blueprint to clean up Roosevelt Avenue has already been done. Exactly what Rudy Giuliani did in Times Square. You go after the businesses at the same time you're going after the minor crime. You have like a multi-tiered response to that. I think Mike Marino was in here before. I mean, I'm sure we could just bring Mike Marino in. He could put together a plan. We could have Roosevelt Avenue looking a lot differently a month from now, and it'll look differently overnight, but it'll be a real big difference in a month from now. And that's utilizing all of our city agencies appropriately, going after the landlords, going after the businesses, while going after the street crime as well. And obviously, you're going to need the district attorneys on board with you, and you're going to need some judges on board with you as well. But that's something that should be done, and that should come top down from the mayor. And obviously, the mayor is completely inept in doing that. I don't even think he knows how his units actually function. And what you get from CURE now is, if you call them up, you're just going to get shook down, right? Like, that's what happened basically. You got shook down. Like, they got rid of an effective public safety tool and put it down with an extortion ring. So
you end up paying the tab.
Yeah. Well, I agree with you, John, but we shouldn't expect any of that anytime within the next, say, how much months we got to go? 3 months? I think this, like, Eric Adams is clearly checked out right now, and he's already told us that he's checked out, And
he hasn't done it for 4 years. I'm not saying that anyone in elected office right now is competent enough to accomplish this. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying that the agencies are there. The people in the rank and file could get this job done if they had the right leadership. That's all I'm saying.
I agree. And like one thing that confuses me is, like, I mean, what does Kaz do all day? We pointed this out all the time. Why don't you just tell him, okay, this is your job from now on? That's just take the sheriff's office, take whoever, and that's clear that up. Every day you're there, rather than every 4 months. But, the problem is this: Adams has been inept, and we mentioned before how he's clueless about policing. So he's only as knowledgeable as the people in his circles that inform him of what's actually going on there. And the other thing is that, again, now they're all checked out. So that problem is going to fester and maybe even get worse by the time Mamdani gets in there, and if he plans to actually do something about it and not continue on this whole legalized prostitution nonsense. If he plans to do something about it, then it's going to take a while to even get to, maybe 4 to 6 months before they actually put together a legit plan, to focus on it. So I don't think this is going to get any sort of policing attention for a while.
I'm also, I'm curious how the NYPD documented these crimes, also the stabbings that he's talking about, because most likely it was illegal military age males that were the victims, and most likely it was illegal military age males that were the perpetrators in this case. Do we know that for a fact? But most likely based on that area and the conglomerate of illegals that are in that area. So I'm curious how the NYPD actually documented it, if it was documented at all. Was this reported? Especially if they're illegal military age males, what's going on with right now with ICE. I wonder if this was actually reported and if this was actually documented crime.
Yeah. No, I mean, I don't think it was. I don't think that we're documenting anything anymore. Like, everything's crimes down. Shootings are only reported when someone's struck. I mean, and like put Kaz there. Like they've put Kaz there 7 times, dude. Like he only has surface level public relation events that basically he gets a media cloud. They do some surface level stuff. He just doesn't get the big picture, dude. Like he doesn't have any long-term effective strategies or solutions. Like honestly, again, and I think that was a failure of him, John Shell, Ed Caban, and even Jessica Tisch now. And like they literally couldn't see the big picture. They just don't see the big picture. They're like, all right, we'll bring the news cameras. We'll make a bunch of arrests. We'll tout that. We'll do a big press conference. We'll leave. And then it just comes back. Like the big picture is no, like you got to go after those businesses that are running prostitution rings. You have to go to hold those landlords accountable that are letting prostitution, that are letting brothels and gambling dens run in their buildings. Like, you know what I mean? You have to work in conjunction. Not that you want to shut people down but like, listen, if you're allowing criminality, if you're literally turning a blind eye to criminality and it's worsening the neighborhood, I mean, you have a responsibility as a landlord, as a business owner, to ensure that that's not happening in your business or that's not happening with who you rent to. And so those things could easily be done, but they're not looking for a long-term solution. And that's the whole problem. That's the problem in New York City. That's the problem across this country. That's the problem wherever you install Democrat leadership. They're not looking for long-term solutions. The only long-term solutions they're looking for is to have less police on the streets. That's it. They're not looking for actual solutions to provide public safety. I said it earlier in the show, that evidence-based approach to public safety, evidence-based. They have no evidence. The evidence is overwhelmingly horrible against them. So, anything else on NYPD news or anything else like that? I kind of wanted to go national because there's just so much stuff going on with the MAGA movement, these H-1B1 visas. Anything you guys want to talk about before we move on?
No, that's good. I definitely want to move into the H-1B1 visas. Marlon, go ahead, brother. Sorry.
Well, I'm curious how the Queens North chief gets away with this prolonged problem. How come they're not being like nobody's coming down on the Queens North chief? Like, why does this problem keep going on and on and on and on? Where's the accountability?
But to be fair, why just pick on him?
Well, I'm not just picking on him, but if you're the Queens North, if I'm the Queens North chief, if I'm not getting any solutions from 1PP, I'm at least gonna find a surface level solution to that.
True. That's true. But my point in asking that question is just that, I haven't really seen anything from any borough chiefs. You know what I mean? I mean, look, crime levels off. Like, let's just take Staten Island, for example. Crime has leveled off now. Like, Melissa Eager was appointed the chief of Staten Island, but crime had already leveled off before she was appointed. Good friends with her. Everybody knows that. But prior to her being appointed, crime was up over 100%. So it's leveled off over 100%. But all of the prior borough CEOs prior to her, they oversaw that whole rise in crime. They all got promoted. Brooklyn South, same thing. Brooklyn North, same thing. Manhattan South, Manhattan North. Every area, the Bronx, we've experienced crime has doubled under Eric Adams. It has literally doubled under Eric Adams. And for 4 years, what have we got besides parties and people getting promoted? So, like, Roosevelt Avenue, yeah, it's a big one because it gets a lot of media attention. So I agree with you that there should have been some surface level. Maybe you put a Roosevelt Avenue post there. You have a Roosevelt Avenue team, whatever it is, a condition team dedicated totally to Roosevelt Avenue, right? Whatever you do, you're going to do X, Y, Z. Nobody's doing this. Nobody's drinking on the street. Nobody's doing, like, you know what I mean? I want to see activity coming from up there. You're not leaving Roosevelt Avenue. You're up there. 100% I agree with you. But to be fair, I mean, it's happening all over the city and nobody's doing shit about it and everybody's getting promoted anyway. So why would he bother?
Yeah, good point.
Yeah.
This is something not to continue on this topic, but that's something we should have a totally other episode about, because if they're not doing anything, what's the point of having a borough chief? So.
Yeah. Before we go to the visas, though, like this comes out from Megyn Kelly. I don't know if this was a slip. I don't know what the hell this is, but I'm telling you, I don't trust any of these people. Listen to this conversation.
As for Epstein, I've said this before, but just as a reminder, I do know somebody very, very close to this case who is in a position to know virtually everything. Not everything, but virtually everything. And this person has told me from the start, years and years ago, that Jeffrey Epstein, in this person's view, was not a pedophile. This is this person's view, who was there for a lot of this, but that he was into the barely legal type. Like, he liked 15-year-old girls. And I realize this is disgusting. I'm definitely not trying to make an excuse for this. I'm just giving you facts. That he wasn't into, like, 8-year-olds, but he liked the very young teen types that could pass for even younger than they were, but would look legal to a passerby. And that is what I believed, and that was what I reliably was told from him.
So I'm like, I'm sorry. So if you're not a pedophile if you go after teens? Like, like, we're at the point now that people are making excuses for Jeffrey Epstein, saying, well, he's not really a pedophile. Like, no, sorry, Megyn, he's actually a pedophile. Yeah, you just described a pedophile, but you're okay with it. Like, that's what I heard. I mean, I don't know if this was a slip. I don't know if it was a Freudian slip. I don't know if she's really stupid. I don't know what the hell she's talking about, but she described a pedophile.
I'm going to say that's not a slip of the tongue or anything. I think they're trying to shift the Overton window on that. And, I have to really filter what I'm saying here. Otherwise, YouTube is definitely gonna put this episode in the can. But there's a term they were using called something attracted persons a while ago.
Yep, maps.
And that is definitely part of the agenda to make this okay in society. So I don't think it's a coincidence at all.
No, I agree with you, because what's barely legal? Barely legal is illegal. And the bottom line is you're describing a pedophile. It's absolutely disgusting. I don't think it was a slip either. She knows damn well she's talking about a 15-year-old. It completely falls under the age requirements, which I think is 17 or 18. And that's why I always talk about there's a difference between man's law and moral law. And even if the law is 17 or 18 years old, Epstein's a grown man, established billionaire, an elite with a lot of access. You don't morally, I don't think, and ethically, you should be hanging around with 17, 18-year-old girls anyway, even if they're legal by the law. Morally, it's just not right. I mean, I think about myself as a grown man. My daughter's the same age, but not even that. Even what would you have in common with that person? Besides sexual relations. I mean, how could you even have sexual relations with a kid that age? It's absolutely disgusting. There's something wrong with you. There's clearly something wrong with you. That's why I say there is a difference between man's law. Yes, you could talk about the age itself, age of consent, but morally, it's just, what kind of person are you? A grown man who's really established. You need those, access to a 17, 18-year-old girl and 15, much younger. It's absolutely ridiculous. There's something wrong there.
Yeah,
I don't
it's
believe
not like we're talking about high school kids dating, like a senior in high school
Right.
dates a freshman. Like that's I get it. Like that's not like I don't, I never did it, but I don't think it's I don't think that's, those are two young kids that are in the same environment that turn out and like each other. Like that happens. We're talking about a grown man, 50 years old, 40 years old, 30 years old, 15 years old. Absolutely not. This is Melinda Gates on this dude. Here's what she's got to say.
Evil personified. I had nightmares about it afterwards.
Melinda French Gates opens up following her and Bill's divorce and the role Jeffrey Epstein played in their split. The power couple revealed last year that they ended their 27-year marriage.
Any of the questions remaining about what Bill's relationship there was, those are for Bill to answer.
That's Melinda sitting down with CBS Morning's Gayle King on Thursday, her first wide-ranging interview since the split announcement in May.
Divorce is a painful process, even when it's what both parties want. It still is a very painful, personal decision.
It wasn't one moment or one specific thing that happened. There just came a point in time where there was enough there that I realized it just wasn't healthy, and I couldn't trust what we had.
Among those contributing factors, Bill's connection to convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. The disgraced financier died in jail in 2019 while awaiting trial for sex trafficking charges.
It was also widely reported that Bill had a friendship or business or some kind of contact with Jeffrey Epstein.
It's not one thing, it was many things. But I did not like that he'd had meetings with Jeffrey Epstein, no.
And you made that clear to him?
I made that clear to him.
Melinda admits she met Epstein and doesn't mince words about her first impression.
I wanted to see who this man was, and I regretted it from the second I stepped in the door. He was abhorrent. He was evil personified. I had nightmares about it afterwards. My God, I feel terrible for those young women. It was awful.
So, I mean, firsthand account, right? And then to me, Megan was 100% downplaying. 100% downplaying it. Like, she's saying evil personified. She's basically mouthing that she left her husband because she doesn't know what the hell he was up to with them. She's like, she was disgusted by them and she couldn't do it anymore. I don't know, man. I don't know what the hell's happening. Like, I think Kash Patel's been a huge disappointment, dude. Like, huge. Dan Bongino, Kash Patel. Like, I have zero faith in those guys going forward. Like, what do you guys think about that? Like, do you believe anything that's coming out right now from the FBI?
No, I don't. Clearly, things are different between Kash Patel prior to getting there and the Kash Patel we see now. There's clearly a sort of firewall between the public and the truth of Epstein, and I don't believe in a word that's coming from them right now, and I think he's connected to so much, right? And so many people in government and celebrities and all these people that it's like it's too big for us to know the truth, even though we already basically know the truth now. We already can put two and two together. But I think clearly there's a firewall in between us and them actually telling us the truth. And I think part of that is to keep all these people in line. And, because the minute all that information is let loose, they no longer have something over these people, first of all. And then the public is going to want to know how deep the thread goes in all of this.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, again, Megyn Kelly, that was full of shit. A 15-year-old girl, I'm sorry, in comparison to a 50 or 60-year-old man, especially one that's established that can have any materials in life that he wants, is a baby. That's a baby. And yeah, an 8-year-old is a super baby, but a 15-year-old, when we're talking about sexual relations, is a baby. That's absolutely disgusting. But Joe Ramirez said it here. If that list ever comes out, nothing will happen anyway. And I agree, because I have no trust in Kash Patel or Dan Bongino, so I believe nothing will happen anyway. It makes no difference, but these people are disgusting. And clearly, Melissa Gates made it known that she knows exactly what her husband was doing. She's just not going to say. He probably paid her not to say anything, but she knows exactly. She's full aware of it.
Yeah, the idea of a list is wrong, Joel. We're getting this wrong. There's no list, you know. It's a group of names that are all connected to him via the investigation, and it's the flight logs, it's all the documents. So there's no like one list that they're holding from us. It's the names connected to the investigation is what they're gatekeeping.
Yeah, so I don't know, man. I just don't like anything that's coming out. I think honestly, I'm just as disappointed in the federal government as I was on the Joe Biden. Like, and I'm not even like going to mince my words about it. I don't believe they've done enough on the border. I don't believe they're doing enough to protect Americans. I don't believe they've done enough to end corruption, political corruption. I don't think they've stopped the weaponization of the DOJ. I don't think they stopped the weaponization of our law enforcement agencies. I personally think we've moved so far left, it's not even funny. It's like, and we're just kicking the can down the road now. It's almost like I'm listening to CNN and I'm like, these people are making sense. Like if these people are making sense to me, there's a real problem. Because if there's a real problem with the right, that means we're moving way past them. And so, you know, Trump was getting a lot of heat over allowing 600,000 Chinese students into our colleges. Now, I'm going to say right now, I get that we're a country of immigrants. If we haven't learned the amount of immigration we should allow each year and even allow people to become naturalized citizens at this point in the country, we're destined for failure. We're absolutely destined for failure. And I think, again, that just shows government incompetence. 600,000 Chinese students across all of our colleges is the worst idea I ever heard of in my life. I mean, it's basically you're allowing a sitting army to come in. You're allowing a complete culture change in all of our universities, and you're taking away seats from our own kids. I'm not saying that we can't let foreign students in. I'm not saying that at all, but there has to be a limit to it. Every other country has a limit to it. Why don't we? 600,000 is insane. To tell me that Make America Great Again was going to tell me we were going to have 600,000 college students from a foreign country enter into this nation is insane. Before we even get on the H-1B visas, what do you think about that? 600,000 Chinese students into American colleges.
Yeah, I think, well, my whole thinking on that is it's a bailout for the universities. See, the problem is universities no longer, they're no longer, the curriculum a lot of them teach is no longer, it no longer corresponds with what society needs. Okay, we need people with physical engineering skills, trade skills, and we need people taught in vocational schools. We need to build factories so that we could build things to compete with China now, because China builds all the stuff and we end up having to buy it from China. And that ends up hurting our industries because our industries cannot compete with them. If China started shipping all of their EVs into America, we would have EVs overnight. Everyone would be driving their EVs because their EVs are like 30K, whereas our EVs are like 70K, 50K and their quality is much better. And it's because they build stuff and they're skilled in building those stuff, whereas we are not, and our supply chains are diminished because of that. So what should have happened is he should have let these universities, some of them have to go bankrupt, okay? Because that's how the free market works. If you cannot, you cannot evolve with the market and the market needs, then your company goes bankrupt and you get gobbled up by the younger, more agile competitors. So he should have let the universities go bankrupt or transition themselves into vocational and trade schools and physical engineering schools. But he didn't. And all these 600,000 students, I really have no issue with that. If number one, we let the free market take its hand. Okay, so those universities transition, and we monitor those Chinese students who are actually spies in America, because the government knows who all of them are, but they never do anything about it. We knew about the foreign Chinese police stations in Chinatown, and we didn't do anything about it for how long? So I have no issues with it outright, but my issue is that the system, the universities need to go bankrupt. Some of them need to go bankrupt because that's how the free market works.
I think the number is astronomical. If you think about 600,000 Chinese students, that's basically the size of a small city, like, well, not necessarily small, but that's like the size of a city like Baltimore or even Vegas. But ultimately, I think many of these programs and these universities depend on international funding. They depend on these students from on an international basis. And but back to what you're saying, these students that come from China, these international students, they pay their full freight tuition. So I think it comes down to funding. I think 600,000 is just astronomical. The number's insane, but I think it comes down to funding because they're full-fledged paid students. So I think ultimately that's what it comes down to, because some of these universities are in some serious debt. So foreign nations coming in paying full freight tuition, that is an opportunity for them to pay it. I'm sure the promise there is that once they pass in the university, they'll probably transition to an H-1B1 visa themselves, right? Because in order to be here as a college student, you have to be here on an F1 visa. So that F1 visa will probably transpose to an H-1B1 visa.
I mean, I don't really care the reason, whatever it is. I mean, it shouldn't happen ever. Like, this shouldn't happen. This is not making America great again. It's just not. This is just kicking the can down the road further. And it's changing the whole culture of our civilization. It's dumbing down our kids, taking away opportunity for learning from our kids. If your business model isn't working, selling the nation out really isn't a great business model for it. Harming our youth isn't a great business model for it. So I think the fact that Trump is supporting this, again, makes me believe that I'm never going to vote for anybody who's 75 or over to be the president of the United States ever again in my life, because this is direct opposition of what he said he was going to do. It's absolutely in direct opposition to what he's going to do. Then he goes on to the H-1B visas, and he says that, well, we have to bring these people in because we don't have any talent here. So he says, your kids aren't talented, my kids aren't talented, you're not talented, I'm not talented. Is that making America great again? Is that an America first ideology? We need these people because we don't have talent here. Now, there are skilled jobs that you may need to bring some people from overseas in to do. 81% of these visas are for entry-level jobs. What are we saying? What are you saying? It's not America first. This is everybody else but us first. This is a globalist ideology, directly against it. And I'll tell you right now, I said before, like, I think we're going to lose the midterms. I'm like guaranteeing it at this point. Like, I don't see, unless there's a drastic shift overnight, I don't see Republicans coming out to vote. I just don't. I just don't. I don't know. I'm not enthusiastic about anybody anymore. I'm not.
Yeah. Well, I don't think he cares about midterms anymore because really, I mean, he's governing like a Democrat now anyway. So it's not like the Democrat Party is going to actually be against anything. The establishment Democrat Party, okay? Because again, we talked about how populism is in the Democrat Party too. But he's governing like the establishment Democrat Party anyway. So I don't think if the Republicans lose both houses or whatnot, I don't think it's going to matter to him. But I'm also going to say that he's right when it comes to one thing, which is I agree with him that we don't have the skill for a lot of the jobs they need. But it's not that we can't do it. It's just that the economy isn't tailored for that now. And whose fault is that? Well, it's the fault of presidents like him, who just kept kicking the can down the road, and they created an economy that was tailored towards like abstract jobs and finance jobs and all this financialization of Wall Street instead of like building stuff in factories and having a production economy built on top of us making stuff, like China. So who created those conditions where young people went to school for those jobs and they didn't go to school for say, mechanical engineering, or they didn't go to become electricians, So, I mean, he's complaining about the problem, and yet putting in conditions there that just kicks the can down the road and prolongs the same problem.
Yeah, you're right. And this doesn't make America great again. Absolutely not. We've heard numerous times that if you become a plumber right now, if you become an electrician, you're going to be the next future of millionaires in this country. And I agree with that. Trades are the most attractive jobs right now. But why are we not pushing our people towards those type of universities those trade schools and getting them those jobs? Why are we not pushing our own people from within? So, it's ultimately it's about corporate greed. I think Joe Ramirez makes a great comment here. This isn't just a Republican or Democrat issue. It's about corporate greed. Yes, the Democrats allow migrants to flood our systems while the Republicans do the same under a different guise, all driven by. Yeah, the left and the right, they're moving in lockstep here. It's just about corporate greed. This doesn't make America great again. And John, you brought up a great point, is that 8 out of 10 of these jobs are entry-level jobs. We're not even talking about specific tailored jobs where we need to get a certain amount of people that have expertise that maybe they can teach our Americans so that we could eventually carry the torch. No, these are entry-level jobs that we can do ourselves. So I think this is just pure bullshit.
So let's see what this little week. I by the way, I was never a fan of this guy. You know who else I'm not a fan of? Nick Fuentes. I think they're just polar opposites. These guys, like, I think they're there for like the low testosterone male on the left and the low testosterone male on the right to like capture them. Like, I don't know. Like I could never really get into a Ben Shapiro, and I could never get into a Nick Fuentes. I just don't. I look at them and I see like 40-year-old virgins, and I just see dudes that like I don't relate to at all, and I don't know what they're talking about half the time. This is Ben Shapiro on affordability in America. This is what he's telling Americans now. I mean, Ben Shapiro does not care about America. Ben Shapiro is Israel first. And I just want to say right now, you could be critical of Israel, does not make you an anti-Semite. Right? You could be critical of Palestine. That doesn't mean that you hate Muslims. You know what I mean? So all of this shit that's happening on the right now, where they're trying to control your speech by accusing you of isms, like same thing in 2020 that the Black Lives Matter movement was doing. Oh, if you say anything, you're a racist. Ben Shapiro, Mark Levin, they're all engaging in this now. Oh, these guys are Nazis. You can't talk to them. And the whole right is moving in that way, including the director of the FBI, saying that, oh, we're gonna police your speech. The head of the DOJ, Pam Bondi, said the same thing. No. I could say what I want, and in America, I have the right to say what I want. So here's what Ben Shapiro's advice to your children is, to you and your children.
There are, in fact, certain positions in the United States that require a level of expertise that may not be reachable in the numbers that are currently being churned out by American universities. That is a shortcoming of our educational system, and it is a problem. And so you can say we should up our game. I agree. We should absolutely up our game educationally. But in the meantime, if you do not bring in the labor supply, particularly to tech will go find the labor supply. And so what you will end up with is an office that was employing 30 Americans and 3 H-1B visa people. If the costs grow too high, simply moving to another country where they hire 30 Indians and 0 Americans. Right? This is the problem with the reason companies offshore is not because it's easy or fun to simply move your company somewhere else. It's because the labor cost becomes so prohibitive in the United States that companies move away.
So he's not saying that Americans are dumb. So if you really listen to what he's saying, and he spills the beans right here, he's not saying, because again, 81% of these jobs are entry level, mean that anybody could do it. It means that John Shellick has Daughtry could enter into these positions and wind up being successful, right? It doesn't mean that you need to be a talented, skilled, or competent individual. 81% of them are entry-level positions. What he just told you right there is because you guys want too much money. And you know what? It's frankly cheaper to bring in these H-1B1 visas. They're better workers than you. They have less worker rights than you. Or we're just going to offshore all these jobs anyway, and these jobs are going to leave America anyway. So that's just what he said right there.
And you can try to tariff them back, but all that does is artificially raise the price on Americans. Again, we're talking about affordability. There are trade-offs in economics. Autarky comes with the fun feeling that everybody in America is making American product. It comes with the very large downside that your products are economically inefficient, they don't work as well, and you're not globally competitive. Right? All policies have trade-offs. It is also better for the American people, broadly speaking, to bring in the best from other countries. Now, how do you determine the best? You can make, again, the case that the H-1B visa program is fatally flawed. It's not bringing in enough of the best. I will point out that many of our best founders in the United States are either immigrants or the children of immigrants who came in on H-1B visas or who came in just generally without an H-1B visa through other forms of legal immigration as students. And the reality is that maybe our screening procedures should be different, but we need to see specifics on what the screening procedures you're applying are that would allow for there to be, for example, an Elon Musk American citizen creating tens of thousands of jobs. Or the head of Google, Sundar Pichai, creating tens of thousands of jobs. Or the head of Microsoft, Satya Nadella, creating tens of thousands of jobs. Now you can say that maybe if those people didn't exist, there would be an American who just did that job. But that is now living in the realm of theory. It's not living in the realm of reality. Brain draining other countries is also a good thing for America in terms of our own global competitiveness.
So Americans don't create jobs. Only immigrants create jobs. That's what Ben Shapiro just told you there. Only people that from outside the country could become successful create corporations. That's what he's telling you. So we're just going to forget about Henry Ford. We're going to forget about Dale Carnegie. We're going to forget about our entire history in this country. And we're just going to nitpick who we think. And those people are immigrants.
Yeah. So the entire problem with all of this is for you guys watching who may not understand like the larger problem here. The larger problem here is that America is the global reserve currency. The whole world uses our currency. And if the whole world uses our currency, it incentivizes us. We need a mechanism where they get our currency. And that mechanism is that we move jobs overseas and they sell us products and we give them US dollars for it. And they use those US dollars to trade on a global market for energy and food. And this system is a byproduct of the US dollar being the world's reserve currency, right? And one of the other negative byproducts of that is that goods become very expensive to produce in America and then sell to the rest of the world. So naturally now you have to constantly import a cheaper worker base to produce what few items you do produce in America. And as a result of this, also, Wall Street financialized itself, meaning they leveraged themselves on even more debt and derivatives and all this like complicated financial instruments instead of what we used to do in the old days, which is, companies would make a product, sell the product. Okay. Nowadays, companies make more money off of their stock price, their stock valuations going up than they do an actual productive product. Okay. You have many companies in the stock market that are unproductive, that don't really make any money, but their stock valuations are like ridiculous. I mean, look at OpenAI right now. I mean, look at NVIDIA. NVIDIA sure is a great company, but look at all the leverage. Look at the circular economy they've created where they're investing in companies that are also buying products from them, that are investing in another company. It's all a Ponzi scheme. And what Ben Shapiro is arguing here is he's not telling you the problems in the economy because people like him benefit. The elitists benefit from all that financialization and the ability to leverage off debt. Okay, he's not telling you the cause of the problem, but he's telling you why exactly they need the cheap workers in the system.
Well, I'm glad you brought up the economic apparatus too, because I think what it does, especially people like Ben Shapiro, it's about undercutting the working class and the middle class, right? You depress wages, and ultimately, if illegals or even HB1 visas are doing these jobs, it undercuts middle class. And what do we have? We have ultra rich and ultra poor, and it undercuts the middle class. Is what's something that people like Ben Shapiro and elites want to do. Exactly what you said, Marlon. Spot on.
Yeah, and so here's his solution for America. Here's his solution for your kids. Here it is.
For a young person and you can't afford to live here, then maybe you should not live here. I mean, that is a real thing. Yeah, I know that we've now grown up in a society that says that you deserve to live where you grew up, but the reality is that the history of America is almost literally the opposite of that. The history of America is you go to a place where there is opportunity. And if the opportunities are limited here and they're not changing, then you really should try to think about other places where you have better opportunities. For a young person.
So look, you guys can't afford anything, so you guys should leave the country and let us import foreigners to do your work for slave labor. For pennies on the dollar, what we're paying you. That's what Ben Shapiro is saying. Like, who listened to this guy at this point? Like, does this guy have any credibility whatsoever? Like, this is literally we're listening to the downfall of America. We're listening to it, and we're listening to these people tell you we're living in the golden age while they're telling you, you know what? Maybe you shouldn't leave here because this country is really not for you. This country is really not for you. This isn't the land of opportunity for you. This is the land of the globalist elites who want cheap labor.
Yeah. Again, the Daily Wire right now is I think they only have maybe a few more years left before they go bankrupt entirely, and they lose people like Matt Walsh. I think the scam is been played out, and I think too many people are awake now, realizing that we have a group of people who are just eating off of us as the rest of us become broke. And we don't really have a real economy anymore. And you'd have thought that would have woken up America during COVID, when even the medicines that we needed to go beg China, the same place where the virus was alleged to have come from. So it didn't wake us up then, but I think enough people are starting to understand the nature of the problem right now. And Trump even pointed out the nature of the problem before he even got in office. So it's ironic now that he's kind of kicking the can further down the road.
Yeah, Joel Ramirez on Fire today, great comments. He says it's a socialist mindset where the rich stay rich and the poor remain poor. America could sustain itself by providing financial support to people, ensuring decent living conditions for all. Absolutely, brother. And what this comes down to is, look, people like Ben Shapiro who have benefited from the opportunity of this country. It's quite interesting that we're now telling people, where we once told people America was a land of opportunity. You could be whatever you want in this country, right? You could do whatever you want to do. And now we're telling them quite the opposite. Well, if you can't cut it, well, maybe there's another country that you could cut it, because this is not for everybody. This is not the land of opportunity anymore. It's the land for certain people.
Yeah, it's and here's Marjorie Taylor Greene. So she gets destroyed in the media, and I see why, because this is what she's got to say.
My dear fellow Americans, I'm introducing a bill to completely eliminate the H-1B visa program, which has been riddled with fraud and abuse and has been displacing American workers for decades. There will only be one exemption in my bill, and it will allow for a $10,000 per year cap on visas issued to medical professionals like doctors and nurses who provide life-saving care to Americans. However, even this $10,000 per year cap will be phased out over 10 years to allow us time to build our own pipeline of American doctors and physicians. My bill will also restore the original intent of the visa, for it to be temporary. These visas were intended to fulfill a specialty occupational need at a given time. People should not be allowed to come and live here forever. We thank them for their expertise, but we also wish them well so they may return to their home country. My bill will take away the pathway to citizenship, forcing visa holders to return home when their visa expires. In order to build our pipeline of American doctors and medical professionals, my bill will also prohibit Medicare-funded residency programs from admitting non-citizen medical students into their programs. Just last year alone, there were over 9,000 doctors in the U.S. who graduated from medical school but were left without a residency placement. Meanwhile, in 2023 alone, there were over 5,000 foreign-born doctors who received residency spots. This is entirely unfair, and it's America last. My bill will help mitigate the shortage of doctors and nurses in our country, the shortage that we face, while at the same time serve as an off-ramp from our reliance on foreign workers by allowing us time to fill our residency programs with American doctors. Now, this will completely end the H-1B visa program in all other sectors in the job force and in the workforce. This is America first. It's time to put American citizens first instead of foreigners first. And this has gone on, and this has been an abuse for far too long. Americans deserve a future, they deserve a chance, and I believe Americans are the most talented people in the world, the most creative, and I want them to have their American dream. Thank you.
I mean, what do you guys think about that? I'm in full support. I totally agree. I'm like, shit has to end. I don't give a shit about the economy. Don't tell me about the thing. If we're either going to preserve this country or we're going to hand it over, and we're going to have open borders, and we're going to go along the line of you will own nothing and you will be happy, and we will continue to put everybody before you while we rape and pillage every dollar we take from you through the tax through tax funds that we steal from you.
Yeah, I'm gonna say I like her bill, but I don't think that goes anywhere. I think nothing happens until, unfortunately, the system that they have in place, implodes on itself. And I'm sorry to say it's gonna be painful for America to go through it, but it has to be done because we've kicked the can down the road. Every time you kick the can down the road to solving these issues, it becomes a bigger problem when the crash does come. And unfortunately, I think the system I'm talking about, the system has to go down. And the system I'm talking about is the system of America being built upon debt and being able to leverage our debt instead of balancing our budget, instead of spending responsibly, instead of allocating resources responsibly. The system of reliance on Wall Street to just leverage a debt in some new securities scheme that just enriches the hedge funds and the people closest to the seats of power. And I'm seeing signs that they want to make it even worse now, than it is. And those signs include like the 50-year mortgage, the 15-year car loans, the Larry Fink of BlackRock, his obsession with tokenizing assets. So what they want to do is they want to tokenize every asset so you can trade pieces of like real estate on the stock market. And that gets even wackier. So all of that has to come down, and we got to go back to the old school making stuff before certain bills like that are passed, because the problem is the people who are fighting those bills have a lot of money, and they can always fight that by paying off these senators and politicians.
Well, the bottom line is America is no longer a superpower at this point. If this continues, we are one of, I think it's less than 10 countries in the entire world have more than 200 million people. So in a country of 342 million people, we can't find eligible and kids that we can push into education and trades that we need for this country to build upon. I mean, this country was built on the foundation of trade workers working with their hands. No matter what, crops have to be produced, buildings have to be made, products have to be produced, and it should be by American hands. Should we have some immigrants? Of course, because we support that. But overall, it should be by American hands. But what are we telling these corporate businesses? Well, that you're better off hiring from these H-1B1 visas because it's cheaper cost, it's more effective for you. And you know what? With virtual and Zoom today and StreamYard and all these opportunities, you can have people working from other places also and have cheaper labor and not even have to be here. This is a major problem. This country is just crumbling moment after moment, and we're seeing it right in front of our eyes. America, which was the land of opportunity, America, the place that was built on foundation of its own principles, is no longer.
No, yeah, it's absolutely disgusting, and I don't think it's going to hurt the country. I think it's going to hurt the profit margin of big corporations. That's what I think. I think this is something that needs to be dealt with, and we're just, if we're going to continue to kick down the can down the road, there will be no country. Maybe I will take Ben Shapiro's advice. I'll go move back to Macari, Sicily. I'll stay on the west coast of Sicily then. I'll get a goat and a donkey and some chickens, and I'll live in a little hut, and I'll eat eggs all day long, and I'll go fishing for octopus. This is basically what they're telling us. Like, oh, well, in order to save America, we have to destroy it. And we went from America first to American citizens last. What they're really telling, America first has turned into American corporations first and American workers last. That's really what it means. The working class of America's last. You have no place in the America First movement any longer. The America First movement has literally flipped. It supports bail reform. It supports defund the police. It supports governors like Andrew Cuomo. It endorses them. It tells you to vote for people that have caused every single problem that you've been dealing with the last 20 years. And here's where you really know that MAGA is gone. America First is gone. Benny Johnson's talking about the golden age of America. Time to shave your head, Benny. I mean, because it's been exposed. This is CNN. This is a Democrat on CNN. This is what she's saying.
The H-1Bs right now are not going to shipbuilders.
And don't build ships here.
Well, yeah, but also because if you're building ships for the U.S. military, you're probably not doing it on an H-1B. That's the first thing. But the second thing is they're trying to sort of like shoehorn this policy into their tariff policy, and it's really not that. I do think the H-1B program needs some attention. It needs some degree of reform.
Abby, do you want the next Einstein to come to America or to Shanghai? What do you want? It's about fighting for talent and people that are brilliant.
I'm not fighting against an H-1B visa, folks. I'm the daughter of immigrants. Both my parents are naturalized citizens of this country.
So you should be for bringing people here.
I am saying there are real concerns that people have about companies that abuse the system.
We're talking about genius, bringing 65,000 geniuses to America.
Kevin, you know that it is not just geniuses. Sometimes they're abusing the system and sort of bringing in medium to low wage workers to.
How many of them are at Meta or at Microsoft? Or at St. Jude Children's Research Hospital or at MD Anderson, where they have people coming in.
I'm not arguing against H-1Bs. I'm just saying the percentage of those visas that go to life sciences is 1.9%. Mathematics and physical sciences, 2.9%. 4.4% go to medicine and health.
Right, but what percentage of the economy is that? It's probably, I bet you it's pretty close to that.
65% of H-1B visas go to computer-related jobs.
Yeah, what's wrong with that? What's wrong? It's technology.
All I am saying is that actually, I think you're right. Maybe there's an argument to be made that more of those visas should be available for rural hospitals, should be available for people in the life sciences, should be available for researchers, should be available to the geniuses in other fields.
So let me go back to the core here.
Why that's a fair argument.
So she's literally just saying all that is wrong with it. And again, it's computers. They need those foreign workers. What, are you telling me that I can't be a computer programmer? I'm 45 years old. I'm not at the peak of my brain. I'm not at the peak of my learning. I'm not at the peak physically. There's not one job that is happening right now other than in the medical profession or in the science professions that not any one of us on this chat and on this podcast can't do. And that's all she's saying is let's not pretend like we're just importing talent here. We're importing cheap labor. And that's what she's saying. 81% are entry-level jobs. Let's not pretend like let's not pretend what we're doing here. We're going for cheap labor. We're going for the benefit of the lobbyist and the corporation who have lobbied these politicians. And you're listening to Republicans who claim to care for the working class, who claim to care to put American citizens first, who claim to want to make America great again. They're arguing against American citizens. And now you have people who you totally disagreed with 10 years actually being like, wait, that really doesn't make sense. And now you see like where we are on the country, where we are in the Overton window. That's where we are. We're further left than we were in 2020. Like what happened, and I don't mean to mix match a million things in here, but what happened in that mayoral election should have opened everyone's eyes that you are all sheep controlled by the mainstream media, controlled by billionaires, and you will do whatever Donald Trump tells you to do because that's what you did. You elected Zohran Mamdani. That's what you did. That's what he wanted. I mean, I hate to mix and match this in there, but like it's the truth. Like and now you're being told that, you know what? Your kids aren't smart enough to work at Meta or Google. Your kids aren't good enough to become doctors in America. You're not that good. We need to import foreigners to do your jobs. And if you don't like it, by the way, you can leave.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm surprised more Americans aren't angry about it, Now, like I said, I'm in the grand scheme of things, I'm still kind of new to America. I came here when I was 7, but you see people who've been there for generations, I don't understand why Americans aren't like pissed off about this, because you see how this destroyed like certain parts of this country. You go to like the Rust Belt, you see certain towns that it's like sad, because you see old videos of what those towns looked like in the past, and now those towns are like ghost towns, and they're meth towns. But I'm also gonna say that it's what's ironic about what's happening now is that I think in a lot of ways a reckoning is coming, because the system can no longer. They're gonna keep trying to kick the can down the road, but it's not gonna work, and it's not gonna work because they need, in order for it to go on, they need China to be on the same ball as them, and the more China exerts its sovereignty, right, exerts its sovereignty and prevents these vampires, these hedge funds, and all that from financializing their economy too and owning all their companies. Right? The harder it becomes for America to continue this system, and the more they will eventually have to deal with it. And dealing with it means bringing back jobs. Hey, so that, by the way, is also why we're in World War III now. People don't notice, right? It's an economic World War III. It hasn't gone hot yet, but it's an economic World War III where we're trying to prevent China from getting access to energy from its partners in Iran, in Russia, in Venezuela. So I think a reckoning is coming one way or the other by China continuing to be a sovereign country of its own.
Absolutely. And who wants this? It's all the elites. You heard from Mr. Wonderful himself, right, from Shark Tank on CNN. We're getting geniuses over here. Yeah. You're the genius because you know that you want them coming over because it's cheap labor. That's what it comes down to. Corporate greed. Joel Ramirez said it earlier. Corporate greed is what this all comes down to. And they're tearing down the fabric of this country for corporate greed. We're getting rid of law enforcement throughout this entire country, replacing it with AI and robotics. And we're removing blue-collar workers. We're removing, things that happen with boots on the ground. Listen, if we don't bring in, things have to be made. That's what I'm saying. If we don't bring in people on H-1B1 visas, there are people that still have to work on the crops. There are farms that still have to work, and Americans will do it. But if we continue with this corporate greed and they could get it at the cheaper rate, well, then people are getting pushed out. And then Americans, now the economy keeps getting hurt. We have Americans that are homeless on the street. Thank you very much. They're tearing this down. And you're right, Marlon. This is a third world war, and it's a cyber war when it comes to the economic apparatus.
Yeah, and the enemy is supposedly on your team. That's the difference.
Yeah.
The enemy is in your elected office. That's the problem. This, by the way, what I have up on the screen, this is New York City. So in order, you have to be licensed in New York City to own a restaurant. You have to be licensed to serve food. So this is how they're getting around paying American employees. This is a restaurant in New York City. This is what they do now. This person on the screen is overseas. And you go to this restaurant, and this is how it operates.
What do I do to order food?
have a window in front of you.
Okay, over there.
Yeah. Yeah.
And where are you located right now? Can I ask you?
I'm in the Philippines.
You're in the Philippines. What do you recommend?
We have the M4.
The M4.
The stallion on regular and the race for the regular.
So you're in New York City. You're going to buy food, and the girl who's taking your order is making $2 an hour over in the Philippines. What's Eric Adams doing about that? What's his Department of Business doing about that? What's Donald Trump got to say about this? Oh, no, nothing. They don't have nothing, right? They got nothing to say about it, right? The problem is the enemies in charge. That's what the problem is. Our government is made up of incompetent, immoral individuals who put American citizens last. And we're a bunch of morons, and we sit there and we play this game. Oh, you're a Democrat. I'm a Republican. I'm this. I'm that. You're this. You're that. And we're getting played. We're getting totally played. Totally played. Totally. That's New York City. That's what's happening. So when they get rid of the H-1B when they get one of the H-1B program, wouldn't even matter anyway, because they'll just do ends around like this, and our government won't do anything to protect it. They won't do it. They'll allow it. So like there's the problem. But you go try to open up a restaurant in New York City. Let's see how easy the process is for you to get those licenses. Let's see how easy and affordable it is for an American citizen to operate that corporation. Let's see how the city of New York treats you, a New Yorker, person that pays your taxes, lived in the city your whole life. Let's see how they treat you.
Yeah. So I don't think I made it clear last time, but my point in bringing up the Rust Belt was that these companies looked for cheaper labor, cheaper supply chains, and that caused them to ship the jobs and production overseas to China. And that is resulted in your Rust Belt towns losing jobs, the population migrating, and, the leftovers there are now on meth and welfare. Okay. So that's my point. And what you're seeing here is not that different. Okay, these companies are looking for cheaper labor, and that is causing them to import that cheap labor using the H-1B visa program. And in this case, with the restaurant, you're seeing them look the waitresses in the Philippines or China right now. So it's not that different. It's the push to continually financialize the economy, because there's no production here, and there's no production and manufacturing in this country.
I said earlier on in the episode that most likely they can hire plenty of workers from Philippines or other parts of Asia virtually. They don't even have to be here, and the labor is so cheap. And the tax rate is much cheaper also for the investor, right? I read a great book talking about tax-free wealth in the breakdown. If you're an investor, right, you pay the least amount of taxes than big business, small business, and the employee is the one that pays the most taxes. So this is beneficial for corporate greed. I think Joel Ramirez nailed it earlier. It's absolutely disgusting that we have to live in this life anyway. I mean, that whole human element is just completely gone. Who wants to order in a restaurant like that? Look at that screen. The girl's not even there. She doesn't even know what's on that menu. She probably never even tried it before, right? She's referring to it by number. She doesn't even know what it's called. Go to number M4. So there's no feeling there anymore. That human element, which I think is so important for life, that feeling is gone. It's so cold. I mean, who wants to even eat there? But this is what America's turning into. It's no longer mom and pop where you get to know the man that works there for so many years. It's just a computer screen. And that girl won't be working there next week. She'll be on to school, and there'll be somebody else working there.
Yeah, I mean, that's what we're doing. We're changing the face of New York. We're changing the face of this entire country into soulless corporate entities everywhere. Get rid of the mom and pop coffee shop and prop up Starbucks everywhere. And then the Starbucks workers are sitting there. They want to get paid $800 an hour like their doctors. Like, oh, I want to live in a mansion. It's like, well, you probably should have bigger aspirations than being a barista. Maybe you be a barista while you go to medical school. Like you're not going to live like a doctor and be a barista. Like, that's not what's going to happen. You're not going to have holidays off and all that good stuff, So that's but like everything that's happening right now is just insane. FBI just put out like this FBI response Twitter handle now. So they're going to go after disinformation and misinformation online. They've been heavy on Kyle Seraphin and the Suspendables. They recently just came out with the January 6th pipe bomber. They put information on who they believe that is, and they're being completely ignored in the mainstream media and by the FBI. Tucker Carlson is coming out, and he's going to give more information on Thomas Crooks tonight. Thomas Crooks was the alleged shooter of President Donald Trump in Butler, Pennsylvania, the one that killed the firefighter as well. And so that's coming out. And there's just this whole attack in the mainstream media against free speech, free thought, anyone that's thinking outside the box. Other thing that came out yesterday was Chief of Detective Joe Kenny and Police Commissioner Jessica Tisch. They're under fire for the Luigi Mangione case now, because Joe Kenny in the news interviews was saying that the mother said that she believed that her son could be the shooter, and there's zero evidence of that. And the defense attorney is now trying to pick that apart. And that's something that just shows what happens when you want to get out there and law enforcement run your mouth. I mean, that's a big problem. If that mother didn't say that, and the NYPD chief of detectives is putting that information out there into the world, whether it was intentional or not, doesn't matter. I mean, that is a huge mistake and has grave implications on the case itself. So, I mean, maybe those news interviews weren't that smart, Joe Kenny and Jessica Tisch. I don't know if you guys got a chance to see that at all, but like basically Kenny was saying something. This was early on. Kenny was saying that the mother said, "Oh, I could see him," like something along those lines. Like, I could see him being the shooter, but that's nowhere. Like, he's like, "Oh, I heard through a source in the other police department," and yet that's not around.
Yeah. Serena Townsend talked about this a while ago, and she was spot on. Since perhaps the perp walk, she's been talking about this.
Yeah.
And I think it's going to become a bigger issue as we go forward. But I can't say you weren't warned, guys. 1PP, we know you're watching. She warned you. Should have listened.
Well, I'll tell you, we were the first to actually report it. Remember, John and I did an episode and we spoke about the perp walk with Louis Mangione, how that perp walk has serious implications and tainted the entire case because Eric Adams wanted to self-promote and also just promote his administration. It was absolutely ridiculous. We've never seen a perp walk with a complete entourage and SWAT, or we call it emergency services in New York. Absolutely ridiculous. Usually 2 detectives transport, very incognito, very discreet, but not with this. This was a display of affection, was absolutely ridiculous by Eric Adams. It was an abomination. That perp walk tainted the entire case. Any good defense attorney would say, well, you've already given the appearance that my client is guilty. He was escorted with 900 cops. It was absolutely the most ridiculous thing. But thank you, Eric Adams. I mean, we're blaming Zohran Mamdani, who's not even here yet, but Eric Adams is still the mayor for another, about 6 weeks. It's going to be a long 6 weeks.
Yeah, Joel says it was like they were walking Superman. Yeah, and Adams is like, we're not going to allow that in my city. We're not going to and he basically played him guilty. He said he was guilty too, which you can't do. I mean, another big problem. But yeah, so Tucker Carlson later today, he's doing a show. He put out a tweet yesterday, and he said the FBI told us Thomas Crooks tried to kill Donald Trump last summer, but somehow had no online footprint. The FBI lied, and we can prove it because we have his posts. The question is why? Story tomorrow, right? So this is where it starts to get crazy. Maybe this post could be a little better if I bring this up. So now the FBI rapid response that's been trying to debunk Tucker Carlson and Kyle Seraphin and the rest of the Suspendables, that have been weighing in on Epstein, Thomas Crooks, and a lot of other cases, the pipe bomber, all these crazy scenarios that we still know nothing about. The FBI rapid response, they're looking more and more like the NYPD's dream team now. They're going out in the media and they're going to control the narrative. They retweet Tucker Carlson's statement, the statement that I just read. And they say the FBI never said Thomas Crooks had no online footprint ever. And readers' notes come in for the win, right? Because they actually debunk what the FBI puts out on social media. They say in a July 30th, 2024 Senate hearing, FBI Deputy Director Paul Abbott disclosed a social media account believed to be associated with the shooter. Abbott went on to describe a general absence of other information to date from social media, and they put the video there of him saying it. So they're on to debunk misinformation, yet they're spreading their own misinformation. You know, and so it's pretty wild. Like, they said that the FBI never said that. Now, to be fair, this clip is before Dan Bongino becomes the deputy director of the FBI. But listen to what he says here. Listen to what he says here.
We talked about this before. I have seen credible information, the extent to which the shooter had significant explosives that were sophisticated beyond that you would expect some 20-year-old just to put together, and that he had sophisticated detonation devices on his person, or a sophisticated detonation device, and importantly, that his digital footprint is completely MIA, that his digital footprint is missing. And that how can a 20-year-old in today's time have no digital footprint? So do you have any thoughts on that, any comments on that? And that'll be my last question.
Well, 4 years of doing protective intelligence investigations with the Secret Service, interviewed probably hundreds of people who have credibly threatened our protectees. I've never seen anything like it. If you would have told me it was a 60-year-old guy who had lived most of his life without a computer and for the last 10 years had been planning this, hard to believe, but digestible. You're telling me a 20-year-old kid who's grown up in the digital era figured this out when he was, 13? To never get an online presence? We've seen nothing. Nothing. We're now 6 weeks in. There's not a Facebook photo. You know, it's incredible. We know every single thing about these shooting incidents when there's a political narrative to be had by the media and the other side. We do. You know who their high school girlfriend was. Sadly, you know everything about these people. We know nothing about this guy. And sophisticated explosives. We have this massive law enforcement bureaucracy. No one's got him with an online search history at a library saying, how do I build this? He's 20 years old. It just defies logic. I can tell you, again, 4 years doing these exact investigations, never, ever seen or heard anything like this in my life.
So it defied logic before he became the FBI director, but now all of a sudden, we're going to shovel that right down your throat, and you better believe it. And now they're telling you, no. What Dan Bongino said was a lie. That's not true. But yet they were easily debunked. I don't know, man. I don't know. Not looking good, my friends. Not looking good. So, like, what the calls are now is that Tucker Carlson needs to be deplatformed because he's a Nazi. And all these other people need to be deplatformed because they're Nazis. It's weird. I remember in 2020, we were all being called Nazis and people were calling for all of us to be deplatformed if you had a different thought about anything. And here we are. The right, who was crying about it in 2020, is now doing the same exact thing that the left was doing in 2025.
Yeah, I think you have to wonder what's going on behind the scenes and just what it is they're holding against these guys to completely change their mindset. You know, it's like we got two different people. It's crazy, right? It's like we have two different administrations here. You know, we have gone is the Maha movement. You know, RFK's primary platform before he got in there. Gone is the Trump, the populist Trump who wanted to drain the swamp. Gone is Dan Bongino, who was calling out all this nonsense before. Gone is the Kash Patel, who would get up in Congress and push back against these senators, you know, openly have arguments with him over there and hold his ground. You have to wonder what's being held over these guys that has completely changed it. And I get called a conspiracist all the time by the usual suspects in that juju, RH. But I mean, no reasonable person can honestly look at the situation and not think that there's more happening than meets the eye right now.
You know, Dan Bongino, to me, it's almost like the movie The Departed when Mark Wahlberg is talking to Leonardo DiCaprio. It's like, you were like two different people, weren't you, right? Right? Dropping your arms on the weekend when you with your family in Southie. That's Dan Bongino. He was one person before he became the deputy director. And when he became the deputy director at FBI, he was a complete different person. Two different people. That makes it even more suspicious. But yeah, no surprise here. No surprise that Dan Bongino, Cash Patel, complete disappointments to me.
Oh, yeah, disgusted. Last thing before we start to wrap up this interview, I just got to play a couple of minutes of it. So Tucker Carlson goes on this guy's show, and this guy thinks he's gonna outsmart Tucker Carlson. He's gonna portray Tucker Carlson as a liar, as a phony. Listen to how this interview goes. I mean, like, this is literally, I'm not like the hugest Tucker Carlson fan. Like I said, I think he's smug, but I think like watching all the people call him a Nazi and calling for him to be deplatformed is insane to me. You know what I mean? Like it's completely insane to me. You can't tell me that people aren't allowed to have conversations in this country. I don't care how offended you are. I don't give a shit. The guy's not a violent guy. He's not calling for violence. He's actually the opposite of it. And whether you agree with him or not, it's his right in this country to do so. So this guy's going to beat up Tucker Carlson right now. Well, he's going to attempt to anyway.
Your good friend Candace Owens has been putting out some pretty wacko stuff, I would say, would be my opinion, on the death of Charlie. It's not helpful, is it, that, at that time of an incredible national upheaval, and obviously personal and familial family tragedy, to have someone like that picking apart the argument and suggesting that there are darker forces at play here that the US government have a hand in covering up. Can you see why people get upset by that and would like you perhaps to sort of distance yourself from that sort of thing?
Pretty funny. So am I going to attack Candace Owens because you
I'm not asking you to attack her.
I'm not going to do that, Harry.
No,
probably not going to do that. I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt as a foreigner of not understanding our politics, but the whole ritual of, this person said something I don't like. In order to be a good person, you must denounce this person. Obviously, I would die before I played along with that. I don't know anyone who's saying that who has the moral authority to compel me. I don't know anyone saying that it was any moral authority at all. And I would say broadly, not about Candace, whom I love, but about all people. Getting to the truth is the most important thing. I've devoted my life to it. I haven't always done a very good job at all, but it still remains to this day my animating motive. I want to know what the truth is. Again, I don't always get there. I usually don't get there. But I want to be the guy who cares what's true. A. B, if you're telling me that because the U.S. government or some law enforcement agency issues a statement that doesn't even make sense, that I'm required somehow morally to accept that and not ask any questions, like, can you hear yourself? I mean, what are you saying?
No, I'm just saying. I'm trying to understand that. The point I'm making.
No, I'm trying to understand. Why don't you answer my question? Hold on. What are you saying? So if you're saying that if a law enforcement agency issues an explanation that doesn't actually answer like basic key questions about what happened, that I'm somehow a bad person for asking a follow-up question?
No, I don't think. I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying that why there is a legal process undergoing and why a guy is standing in an American courtroom today, potentially facing the chair for his role in this. That case, needs to.
I don't think he's in a courtroom today. I don't think he's pled either way.
He was in court. He was in court this afternoon for a hearing.
Did he plead?
it's ongoing as we go on. I think it was.
Okay, so I'll tell you my position as
let me just finish my point. Let me just finish my point. My point is, you asked my question. You asked what I'm saying. I'm saying is spectacularly unhelpful to have conspiracy theories, questioning the
unhelpful to whom?
Unhelpful to the hopefully getting justice for the guy that put a bullet in that young man's neck.
But in what sense? Why is it okay? If a government issue, I mean, I think this is kind of why your country is jumping off a cliff collectively, because it's like, well, the government said so. In my country, we have a long tradition of freedom. And that means that every person is allowed to come to his own conclusions based on the facts and consistent with his own conscience. Our Bill of Rights, unlike yours, guarantees that right. That's why we don't send people to prison for Facebook posts. So if the government issues a description of what they say happened and it doesn't make sense to you, I'm not sure who it's, quote, unhelpful to ask, like, what does this mean? What are you saying? And, I'm not referring specifically to Candace Owens or anyone else, but like, what is it? What are you even talking about? Why is that unhelpful? Are you saying that the government always reaches the right conclusion? Is that what you're saying?
No, I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying there's a risk, though, that during a live trial, essentially, that there's
risk to whom?
A risk to the justice, a risk to the trial collapsing, a risk to giving this guy ammunition to perhaps, to suggest in a courtroom that the case against him is somehow flawed.
But you're assuming he's guilty. Like, that's not our system. We don't pronounce people guilty without hearing the evidence. I don't know, what country are you from? That's not how it works here.
I'm not assuming he's guilty. I'm saying he's on trial right now.
We don't put anybody to death unless we're sure they actually did it. And we're sure they did it because we've heard all the evidence, we've heard the counter argument against that evidence, and then citizens make up their mind. So that's our system. That's how we arrive at justice. We don't just assume because we heard 3 things on Twitter that someone is guilty and deserves the death penalty. Like, that is not justice. That's like African justice. And we just try not to do that here. So I don't know. It looks like this guy did it. From everything I've heard, it sounds like he did it. I don't know.
But so that's just, but the sick thing is, like, this guy's not an American, right? But this is the argument from the right now. This is what they're telling you. Trust your government. Dan Bongino and Kash Patel made a career and made millions off telling you, don't trust the government. Don't trust the FBI. They're trying to deplatform us. Don't let it happen. Stand up for your freedom of speech. And now they're telling you, trust the government and censor anyone who goes against it. And they're labeling you a conspiracy theorist for asking questions that they can't answer. Does that sound familiar? I remember in 2020, that happened to me every day. That happened to Marlon every day. So like, I just thought that was a master class of not letting someone put pressure on you. And this is how every argument should go when you're seeking the truth. You see people pushing a narrative and you see someone pushing the truth. And you could clearly see Tucker Carlson had no objective here.
Yeah. Unfortunately, not most people aren't skilled in understanding what's happening to push back like Tucker did, or to understand what the media is trying to do to you or the game being played here, and it's why we constantly talk about being low information on this network, and why everyone has to do their part to get out of their low information bubble so they could get a deeper understanding of what's happening. And I think once you get out of that, Tucker had his awakening years ago. It seems, and I think once you have that awakening, it becomes very easy to see what's happening. And being called conspiracist doesn't affect me anymore, and it's all because I understand like what is actually happening here and how to really go into the weeds about it. So
I think we should start thinking being called a conspiracy theorist is almost like a compliment, right? That you want to actually read between the lines and ask questions and not get what's at face value. So what was great about that interview, I thought, really exemplifies why it's so important that we push for First Amendment speech and never let that go, because Tucker said it right there. Are you going to take and value what the government says and what the police says? If we were former law enforcement, and even with that, should you take it at face value? No, you should be asking questions because that is your right. That is your right. That's how this country works. And that's why the interview was so good. That was outstanding.
Last thing, I'm just getting a rumor. I don't know if any of you guys got this, but I'm hearing a TD3 cop was arrested for rape of a 15-year-old. Supposedly, the cop had a 15-year-old girl at his house when his wife showed up, and she called the cops on him. So I don't know if any of you guys got that. I don't know what that is, but if that's true, you know, I don't agree with Megyn Kelly. I think he deserves to be arrested, and I just think he deserves to be prosecuted. But the sick part of all of that, the sick part is, if it is true, he'll be arrested. He'll be suspended with pay for 30 days, and then he'll come back to the police department 30 days later. He'll be suspended without pay for 30 days, and then he'll come back 30 days later, and he'll be suspended with pay. And he will receive years of due process while he still collects a salary, while he still has his health benefits, right? And then eventually he'll be given a criminal trial. And pending the results of that criminal trial, he may or may not be convicted, and he may or may not continue to keep his job, depending what the evidence shows. Because like Tucker Carlson said, even if you're arrested, you're innocent until proven guilty in this country, which is a beautiful thing. Totally different than everywhere else in the world, right? You're innocent until proven guilty. So, and then after that, he will have a department trial, and it will be determined whether or not, depending on the outcome of his criminal trial, whether or not he will continue to be a police officer. So for everyone that lost their jobs as a result of the COVID mandate, you did not receive any of that. You asked a question. You were terminated. You weren't given charged with anything criminally. You weren't charged with anything administratively. You weren't even guilty of a command discipline as the patrol guide. You didn't even violate a rule of the patrol guide. And you didn't receive a criminal trial, and you didn't receive a department trial, and you were terminated without due process. And now the city wants you to come beg for your job back. Now, I get some of you guys are in bad situations financially, and maybe you need to do that. But I mean, I think, you know, I don't know. I think that if you're in a bad situation financially, I think that you should engage the process. I think legally everybody should engage the process if you have a lawsuit and see what it is. But I'll tell you right now, it's a real slap in the face to everybody. They're not offering back pay. They're not offering you time restored. They have no idea if you're going to be on probation. They don't even know how it's going to work. And I personally believe this will 100% carry over into Zohran Mamdani's administration. And I'm not sure he's going to go along with it. And it's going to be up to the discretion of each agency head. So each commissioner could say, oh, yeah, I'll take everyone back. So we know in agencies like the fire department, you guys will get back to work. We know in agencies like the New York City Police Department, they'll look for every reason to not bring you back to work. So, I mean, we're trying to get that, whatever we get with any information. And other than that, I'll let you guys know as it unfolds. There's a hearing on the 19th of November. I highly recommend you register, you sign up, you listen to what they got to say there. But again, it's for people who were terminated only. It's not for if you were constructively terminated like myself or anyone else who was given 7 days or be terminated and you decided I'm not going to do that and I left. So there's a lot with that, but just think about that for a second. You could get arrested for rape, you could get arrested for murder, you could get arrested for supporting drug dealers, and all the Democratic politicians and all the Republican politicians are completely fine with those individuals receiving due process. But because you asked a question in 2020 and 2021, and you didn't want to take something for which you already had natural provable antibodies for, which for any other disease in human history, that is acceptable as being vaccinated. You didn't receive any of that. So
yeah, it's because ultimately, like, you know, you can make a case that the elites in society don't care about it, about that stuff, you know, because look how many of them are connected to Epstein, you know. And when we talk about drugs, look now look, history has taught us government has been involved in drugs for decades. Okay, so the government drugs helped us finance covert wars in South America when we would support the FARC in Colombia, and all these other groups. But the scamdemic experiment was of the utmost importance to their agenda. I say it underpins everything, and I continue to say that because, again, that was supposed to lead to digital ID, something that they're trying to push onto us right now. Okay, and digital ID is of the utmost importance because they need it for digital money, and digital fiat money is a continuation of the same financialization of the economy that we have now. It's of the utmost importance. It underpins their whole the hegemony of the U.S. dollar. It underpins the entire system of crony capitalism that America is unfortunately in. So these people, they hate us. Okay, they absolutely hate us, and it's something to keep in mind for you, those of you guys who engage in the process, and that you have to watch out for your interest in this. You have to look at your options, speak to a lawyer, and understand. Don't get sucked into any potential traps that they may have for us going ahead.
I think this is part of Eric Adams' plan to say here's his legacy and he's better than the next guy, because I do believe he's laying down the groundwork for this to potentially bring back terminated workers like yourself, Marlon. And I believe this is going to Zohran Mamdani. And if Zohran Mamdani is a man of his word, just like he said when John and I interviewed him that he would not bring back the city workers, I think that this will just fall on its face. That's my prediction. Listen, we're 3 hours and 10 minutes into it. I think this is an awesome roundtable. I want to thank the friends and listeners. The chat has been explosive today. Some great comments, some really good input. I appreciate it. Hell of a roundtable. Don't forget, Monday, of course, we will be back as always. And Tuesday, Sal Greco show. Tuesday night, 10-4 Tavern. Wednesday, we'll be back again and your executive perspective. So the weeks are stacked as always. We're not going anywhere. Eric Adams and the Crumb Crew, they're going somewhere. We're not. Let's get to the super chats, and thank you for all the coffee and donuts.
Yeah, no, let's do that. Thanks, everybody. And Juju, questions not based in facts. Okay. Questions are not based in facts. Answers are, and anything that the city implements should be. So when I ask a question, like, if I have the antibodies, why do I need to get more? And they can't answer it. And then I ask, well, are those antibodies better? And they can't answer it. And how many do I get with those? Because I know how many I have now, and they can't answer it. And then they just continue to threaten you. It's not really facts, my friend. So, but thanks for sticking with us the whole show. I hope you continue to make money and get paid overtime while sitting here all day long, listening to every show the Finest Unfiltered puts out. You are, my friend, our number one listener. Congratulations. Lifetime listener, baby, Juju. So shout out to you, Juju. But appreciate all you guys. Let's get to the super chat. So we got Snake Plissken, baby. The Finest Unfiltered. Great shows all week. Snake, thank you very much, bro. Appreciate you always hanging in with us. Upstate Detective, appreciate you. Thank you for the coffee and donuts. Who do we got here? The Standing Bear. Never seen this one before. Thanks for jumping in. Morning, gents. Speaking of old commissions, saw Ray Kelly on Fox yesterday. He looked frail and old and seemed to be suffering from some serious health issues. Has anyone heard any word? Seems throat related. Be safe, gents. I haven't heard anything, but I think that, I think he is old now, Kelly. I think, he was a commissioner for a very long time. It definitely takes a toll on you. He did a lot. He was a police officer. He was a Marine. I think, but he is old. He's got to be in his 80s now, Right? You guys hear anything about Kelly? I mean, I thought he looked good last time I seen him, but he looks old,
Yeah.
I haven't had a word. But
yeah.
I actually met him in person when I went down to 2005 for Hurricane Katrina, and he came down and shook everybody's hand. It was headed down there for deployment, and he was like, he was an older man back there. He was strong. He was solid. It was, it was impressive. It would be tough to see him deteriorate. It's sad, but we, unfortunately, we all deteriorate.
Yeah, people get old, I met him around 2007. I remember I was a cadet in real-time crime, right? Oh, and by the way, last week I saw a sergeant. He was a sergeant in real-time crime. Man, I wrote down his name, I saw he made a comment on here. I wanted to
Was
give
it
a
Joey
shout out to
Patrice?
that
No.
sergeant. Yeah. I'll mention you next week. But anyway, I was a cadet in real-time crime when it was like Christmas Eve or the day before Christmas Eve, and he opens the door and he like comes around and he shakes our hands, And he was older then too, but he was a solid guy, very solid. Yeah, Kelly always had like a command presence about him, I also remember when I was a cadet, I went out. I did I went to classes, then I worked, and I went out partying with a detective there. And then I even slept in my car the day before just so I could get back because I had to come back early in the morning, right? So I remember I didn't shave or anything that morning, right? So I remember I was looking like I was looking terrible, and I get into the elevator, the executive elevator, and Kelly's right there, and I was like, bro, I was like mad nervous, I'm like, and this guy has a command presence about him all the time, So I'm like, I got in the elevator with Chief William D'Amico, who later on became the state superintendent of the police state troopers. So I'm in there and I'm like, oh shit, it's Kelly. I'm like looking down, the whole time I'm like, but yeah, man, Kelly always had a presence, and even back then he was older, but he was a very solid guy,
Oh yeah, he definitely had a presence, He definitely, they called him Popeye, dude. Like that was his nickname, Popeye.
Facts.
Like, oh, there's Popeye,
Yeah.
And he's not a big guy. I mean, he's little. He's shorter than me. He's not a big dude,
Yeah.
But he definitely had a presence about him. But Bratton had that same presence too, I think.
Think so?
I as far as he's the boss, like I think Bratton had that. Like he's got like that. You could tell, like if you're like, all right, that guy's somebody. Like if you didn't know who he was, you'd be like, who is that guy?
Yeah. No, absolutely. It's different, now I was never in a room to hear Kelly talk to other people, but like when Bratton retired, in Intel, we had to go to like Hudson Yards, and he's like a direct, he has like some security advisor role over there. So we were in a room with John Miller, some other people from Intel, from Leeds, and Kelly and Bratton was talking in the room, and you knew this guy was like he basically took charge of the room, but his presence was like, I also met him when I got my shield, and it's different, Kelly, you realize, oh shit, I don't want to get on this guy's bad side, whereas Bratton seemed like a friendly old grandpa, but when he did the talking, you knew, man, this guy knows his shit, this guy could easily go jump into 1PP right now and be the PC again, So they both have their presence. I just think it's in a little different ways. Bratton seemed a little more personal than Kelly, and that's just the impression I got. Being, I wasn't at that level where you actually see these guys in that environment, but this is just the view I got from being ground floor.
Yeah, I mean, I've interacted with both of them, and I think. I get what you're saying. Like Kelly has a more intimidating presence, and Bratton's more of like a CEO type of not really physically threatening or anything like that, but like it's
intellectually.
I get what you're saying. I get what you're saying. I agree. I listen. I think it is what it is. Like I said, it's a shame the way things happen, and it's a shame the way that that politics plays out. Because I think. I'm gonna go back and say what I said. Like I think that it really depends who the mayor is, and it depends the direction of the city is at that time. And I think that they were in an opportune times. And I feel bad for everybody. Our generation sucks. I mean, listen, if we were in their generation, I mean, me and Erica are in full bird inspectors right now. I mean, that's we're easily on our way to be chief, and we're gonna do another 15 years maybe. You know what I mean? And so it's just the way things play out, but doesn't mean you should be their hand puppet either. Shouldn't be these political people's hand puppet either. So KB 1013, baby, you've already got coffee and donut money. So here's some chopped cheese, kid, the Aki way. Thanks, KB. Appreciate it. Should we ignore Hassan today? What do you think? Or should we read this one? I think we should.
I already
ignore it.
acknowledge Hassan. You want to give him 2?
All right, let's see what he's got to say here. Hassan Mo. Good morning. Where's Angry Mo? Eric, I made a level 1 missing for you on vacation. You ducked the phone since you guys decided to use my country flag. Only fair. Marlon takes his hat off. He muted himself again. And always in loving memory of Derek. Thank you, brother. But listen, we got to call it out, right? We got to call out the nonsense on both sides, you know? So if anybody's offended, we use the Israeli flag or the Palestinian flag. Well, my famous line is too effing bad, you know?
That's
Turn
why
the channel. Don't listen.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's why we'll insult both of you at the same time, so nobody gets their feelings hurt.
Yeah.
Exactly. Well, that was epic, brother.
No, this was awesome. But I forget who it was, but they said you should have had a Bossy sneaking in the background looking over. A Bossy and Harrison. I'll add in Harrison. You know, Harrison.
Oh yeah, that's coming. We'll animate that too.
What about me, guys? What about me? Yeah, the AI is getting good, dude. The AI is getting crazy. It's getting nuts. The AI one with this wasn't that great when I was messing around with it. It was like changing her face. His face was staying, but her face was changing. It was making it like a totally different girl, so I didn't do it. But it was him actually proposing, and it was him saying, "Will you be my police commissioner?" It was actually hysterical.
Yeah, the AI tends to do her well. You know, I'll just put it at that. It tends to, you know.
They've been putting videos with her like on some model's body too. That's been going around.
Yeah.
You know, it's pretty funny. So Modern Samurai says, great show, guys. Thanks for the conversation. Don't always agree, but that's the great part. We're having the conversation, and that's what's important. New York City is worth saving. Modern Samurai. Have a great weekend. Thank you, brother. Appreciate it. You know, that's what it's about, right? It's America. We're not supposed to agree with each other. You know?
That's what makes America beautiful. We should disagree. That's how we keep each other in check and keep the balance. If we all just, a bunch of cucks and we just list everything we're told, we wouldn't be America.
Yeah, that's it. So, Eric Adams is the best man New York City ever had. Just ask him.
I'll tell you. He's the Gandhi. He's the Gandhi of New York.
Yeah. So, all right, guys. Anything before we get out of here?
No. Time to go.
All right, later. 3 hours. Later, people.
There's a handful of retired officers that don't live in the state that have a lot to say about the dream team, as I like to call it. All of a sudden, they retire and have a master plan on how to fight crime, but nothing to contribute when they were here. They want to come back and be part of the dream team. What can I say?